I'm going to I don't want to be overly aggressive, so please stop me when you feel like I'm trying to be edgy or to fat post. How bad do you think the situation is in the United States, in the sense of how, on a scale of 0 to 10, how close are we to the inevitable rise of fascism in the United States?
So this is my issue, and I've said this before with some people, and the issue is really one of it's a thing that I can only say this, I'm intellectualizing this hardcore because I don't actually feel this emotionally at all, but I feel like you're not going to feel it emotionally until it's too late. I feel like there is a chance, and when I say a chance, I mean over 5%. So not 70%, but not insignificant. I feel like there's a chance that if the United States in the next 10 years, just the democratic structure just kind of completely collapsed, that people would look at the starting point of that further back in the past than today, is my feeling. So or not my feeling, when I think about it, that's what I think. Because I feel like when you slide into really, really, really bad shit, you don't see the slide. It's just at some point you realize oh shit, the water's boiling and we lit the fire for this a long time ago, but I guess we just didn't do anything about it. That's kind of my worry. And I think there I say this and I've said it so much and I feel like it loses impact. And people think this so much, but you think it so much it loses impact. I feel like every single day sometimes there are things happening where just one of these is beyond the pale. And I think we've had dozens of beyond the pale moments just in this last year alone. We've had dozens of those moments. The deposing of Maduro without any, who the fuck knows why. The idea that we're going to steal oil from Venezuela. The idea that he told oil execs before Congress that he was going to go to war. The Iran thing twice. It was just thing after thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. Yeah. So I think the situation is really, 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 really bad. I think our system and our institutions are very robust. If for no other reason, we have so much. If something's in motion and to stop it, that can still be described as inertia, right? So I can say even though we're moving, we have a lot of inertia. I don't know if that makes sense, but to change decelerate us or to change us in one trajectory or another, it takes a lot of force because we're so robust and we've got so much. But man, we're testing it as much as humanly fucking possible right now. It's just crazy to me. I'm going to watch another. I believe it's a cabinet level hearing for this guy that's going to be appointed that the Senate is trying to confirm, who also doesn't believe in the results of the 2020 election. One of those people in a cabinet would be fucking crazy. The fact that it's all of them, except for one, I believe, is unbelievable. But yeah, so really, really, really bad. Yeah.
Let's get a feeling in numbers just to see how aligned we are. I would say we are probably at a 9.5.
Okay.
At least a 9.
Sure.
Would you agree or would you disagree?
The only reason why I would disagree is because the material conditions are not so dire, such that I think Americans could still be woken up from it. But in terms of what the people have accomplished politically, I feel like it's worse than Hitler on the Enabling Act front, because Trump doesn't have to try to do weird political maneuvers. He can just ignore the Congress, and Trump doesn't have to try to build a coalition to get all these people together. He already won the popular vote. So in that sense, some of the hardest things I feel when the Nazis had to try to win support from enough people or enough coalitions or whatever else, that is the hard part to me, and that's already done for Trump basically. So that's really scary. So in that sense, it's a 10 or more. But then in terms of it's not we're occupied by the French or we've had to give away all of our territory or the conditions are so fucking dire and terrible. So the material conditions aren't so bad that people can be okay, wait, this was fucked. Yeah, so I don't know. Okay. I don't know where you would put that number, but yeah.
Before I'll advance a positive position, why do you think that is? Why do you think the situation around Trump and the Republican Party currently is the way it is?
We could talk for hours about this. This is one of those things where I feel like there's multifactorial things going on. The two things that come to mind the most is that one was the fall of the Soviet Union meant that liberalism broadly had no more easily identifiable enemies. And as a result of that, with nobody to fight with, you kind of just start looking inwards and then you become infinitely self-critical and then you spiral down into that stupid shit is one thing. I don't know how big. I would give that maybe anywhere from 10 to 50% maybe. And then the 50 to 90% thing I would say is the media environment that we live in today and the algorithmically generated feeds that you get that allow people to just inhabit completely and totally disconnected realities from each other is the second thing. If I could snap my fingers and change anything about the world that the United States exists in today to try to change our trajectory, it would be some kind of hardcore change in the media environment, in the media world.
Okay, that is a really good point because I would heavily disagree with both.
Okay.
I would say the fact, if we look at how since the 60s, since the 30s, political campaigning in the United States evolved. We usually, on the Democrat side, we had unions and black churches during the civil rights movement who funded the movement. on the other side, we have things like the Federalist Societies, we have the Heritage Foundation, we have even larger independent media organization as Fox News, who are basically doing their own thing, but they are not funded in the sense of larger organizations that try to grassroots build things up. Rather, they try to have explicit political goals, and those goals are then tried to be passed down from the top. I can't really tell you why that is the case. I can't really tell you why Democrats have such an issue with creating think tanks and parallel societies. But if you look at how Republicans organize, even seeing this in TPUSA, or, well, I think the Federalist Society is the best example. But even then, Republicans tend to create parallel societies within the society of the United States, and thus they rely less on the broader institutions of the United States and only need to weaken them to achieve their own agenda. If you look at Trump won the term, Donald Trump used to be massively unpopular with conservatives and the elite. And somehow, both the Heritage Foundation, for whatever reason, and the Federalist Society campaigned on the idea that, don't worry, when Trump gets into office, Trump will elect conservative Supreme Court judges. Yeah. And then when Trump got elected, they advised them on said judges, I think Gorsuch and Kavanaugh.
I think it might have been every one he appointed, I think. I could be wrong on that. But the lady too, Amy Coney Barrett? No?
I just know that I know for a fact that the Federalist Society advised them there.
Okay.
And so Republicans, and when I say Republicans, I don't necessarily mean the GOP. I mean like the broader conservative movement.
Sure.
They organize in parallel to society. They explicitly build parallel structures, as the case is for the Federalist Society with like their chapters, or in the case of TPUSA, that are not beholden to the broader public. And whenever they come into power, they try their best to claw themselves into power. And sorry, I didn't want to ramble. There's a subsequent point, but should I continue, or do you want to say something to this?
I kind of understand. Are you familiar with the term shadow government?
Mm-hmm.
Like in America, we don't have this term, or we don't have this thing, but it almost feels like that they have like their own people, their own policies. I guess they have like a strong ideological foundation that they're constantly pushing for and building from, such that as soon as they're in power, they're able to kind of, or if they have like a vessel in power, they're able to enact their will through that person, because they already have all these structures set up to advance their ideology and to keep their ideology alive in the minds of everybody else and all that. Yeah. One of the biggest, I've never actually considered this point at all before, so I appreciate you for bringing it up. One of the biggest criticisms of Obama that I've heard is that Obama failed to invest in any kind of like thing for the Democratic Party at all, such that when Obama was gone, everything about Obama was gone. There was no investment. Go ahead.
There is the Obama Foundation. I'm probably going, I hope I don't forget this, but there are Clinton and Obama foundations. They are there, they do exist, but for whatever reason, and I'm not trying to conspiracy theorize you, but for whatever reason, they don't work that way. The Obama Foundation, as well as the Clinton Foundation, don't have the explicit goal of advancing progressive or democratic or left-leaning policy for whatever reason.
Sure.
And
I think it might be more like charity focused than anything else, maybe. That's what I mean when I say like left behind. Like when you talk about like the Federalist Society or the Heritage Foundation or whatever, these are things that are like actively, I mean like the whole Project 2025 is a good example of this, right? Like they have like a whole ideological platform, and then from there we don't have any kind of like ideological thing like that on the left, I think, anywhere.
Not only there are no command structures, or not command. I shouldn't say command structures because actually no. Let me point bring this point here. For the longest time, I have wondered how can it be that the Republican apparatus, whatever, the Republican machinery is so incredibly in lockstep on every level.
Yeah.
But the Democrats are completely unable to formulate any kind of system in any kind, and I am German, obviously, so we don't have that issue here. We have massive issues with Russian intervention into our politics, but we don't have like this, well, to a certain extent, we do have right-wing media, but we don't have this talking point issue where on day one, the lead politician of the AfD says something, and then this is going to be repeated
by every single member of media, government, every
exactly.
person,
and like recently, listening to, I think, one of your, I don't know, maybe with Hutch or maybe with the Polster guy, it clicked for me. It is not that those things are in lockstep, but rather it is a very unique set of circumstances that has now led to Trumpism or American fascism, to the American brand of fascism to give rise. But I hope you can carry this. I hope you agree with this idea, because I think that American fascism diverts in the image of how it presents itself. So, for example, Hitler or the NSDAP were German in the sense that they were militarized. They represented the Prussian ideals. They represented strength, they represented the military, and so on and so forth. I think the reason as to why Donald Trump, or why American fascism is so palatable, because American fascism flourishes on drama and spectacle. Ironically, people who are this overly dramatic and who are this overly spectacular, they don't have policy goals. They don't have like a vision. Donald Trump does not have a vision in any kind for the country. So what he did, or what has happened, is that because he was so power hungry, but so visionless, essentially every conservative organization hatched themselves to him once it became apparent that he was the nominee, and injected their own little thing into him. You can see this with the judges, the aforementioned judges that I mentioned. You can see this with Project 2025. You can even see this with Steve Bannon. I don't know if you know this, but Steve Bannon originally, he was his campaign manager. Sorry, addendum. Steve Bannon did not believe that Donald Trump would win the presidential election.
Sure.
It was after, I think, the first debate that he actually started to fund him. And because Trump was such a bland slate, he is essentially the coalition leader, because everyone can get everything out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like if we're analyzing this in the sense of, we need to now we need to now change the entire GOP. We need to now change the entire media structure or whatever. We're missing that we're just one person away, another Donald Trump, another Jake Paul, for example, or any kind of media person away that just wants power, that can be ejected into this political apparatus that the Republicans created. And they can just repeat it. And the Democrats are completely unable to do anything against this, because they don't have a political vision.
So this is one of my broader points, and it's one of the reasons why I get frustrated with people who think we just have to win the election really hard. My issue is that, so one thing I've said for Trump is I feel like, assuming we come back from all of this and everything is A-okay and perfectly fine, Trump was like, we had a really lucky test run with Trump, because he, in a way, embodies kind of all the worst things about like an authoritarian leader, but like he's also really stupid, because regardless of what you think about Trump, I think that, or what?
That is the opposite of what I'm, sorry, that sounded mean. That is the opposite of what I'm trying to say.
Well, sure. Let me finish. Let me work through this point. So in my mind, I view Trump as being somebody who's very stupid. When I say stupid, I mean he's not very politically effective, and he's an empty vessel for other people to fill their thoughts into, but he doesn't have a mind at all for politics. Somebody in my mind, knowing a little bit about him, but not as much as some, I view Netanyahu to be like an evolved version of Trump, where Netanyahu's main strength is that he can hold together like a coalition really well, and he has like a good mind for politics, but he maybe doesn't push his own. Like Netanyahu is not as far right as a lot of people in the West think he is. It's people like the Smoltriches and the Ben-Gurirs that push him in that direction. That would be our equivalent to like our Stephen Millers and maybe our Bannons in the United States. But the worry would be that now that the ground is fertile, now that somebody like Trump can come in, now that all these structures exist for Republicans to kind of push their ideology through whatever person ends up winning or assuming office, that if a Trump-like figure were to run again, and when I say Trump-like, I just mean he's like a charismatic, narcissistic dude that like Americans vote for because he represents whatever the fuck America feels about itself, anti-institution, whatever. But he had a mind for politics such that he could actually more effectively enact the will of people like Stephen Miller or the more hardcore conservative elements in this country, that it would be like game over, that we would be like completely and totally fucked. And I feel like the ground has been prepared really well for that. It's just a matter of luck now, if that figure actually comes up, that the conservative establishment can throw its weight behind. That's the scary thing to me. Yeah, but go ahead.
That is somewhat close, but that analysis, what I'm now going to say, is heavily colored from a German perspective to the United States looking outward. But I don't think that the American people would ever in their ever elect someone like Stephen Miller or someone like J.D. Vance. As soon as you don't...
Wait, real quick. When you say they would never elect them, I agree with that, but only because of their personalities, not because of their ideologies.
Yeah, no, yes, 100%.
Okay.
The point that I was trying to make earlier is that the American brand of fascism thrives on spectacle and drama. You can't become a populist in the United States without being someone who's overly dramatic, someone who essentially built their entire brand on insulting and producing drama and staying in the spotlight.
Sure.
I don't think that these kinds of people, by definition, are the people who have the mind for politics, because essentially you have to sideline politics for the drama. Like imagine if you were Donald Trump right now, and you have like this imperative inside of you that you want to stay in the spotlight. You want to do stuff.
I agree with you 100,000,000%. I've repeated this a few times. So a guy emailed me this, and it's a good point. I think that there are times when I keep questioning, like, why would this leader do this, or why would this person do this? Like, this is so stupid. If you wanted to be like a good authoritarian, why wouldn't you do A, B, or C? And I had a guy email me before and kind of talk through that. Like, it might be that certain minds are drawn towards certain styles of leadership, and the kind of person that would win an election the way that Trump does wouldn't be the kind of person that would rule in an intellectual manner, right? It doesn't attract those types of people. Yeah.
So in that sense, when you say Trump is not politically effective, or we're lucky that Trump is stupid, I disagree. We are unlucky that Trump is stupid. We are unlucky that Trump has this ability to be funny and to unite all the coalition parts under him, because a person with more of a political mind would have never been able to put together someone as extreme as Steve Bannon, while at the same time getting support from Russia, while at the same time having support from the Heritage and the Federalist Society and Fox News and Newsmax. That is, you have to...
I understand what you're saying. I guess when I'm thinking, I understand what you're saying. I guess what I'm thinking is like, I mean, like if all else equal, if he was more politically effective, but you're talking about running things more like what traits are likely to appear next to each other. I understand what you're saying. I agree with you, I think, in practice, but I feel like it would be possible to have a figure like Trump. Like, I feel like the British version of this right now, just in the little bit that I've seen, I really do feel like Farage mirrors this. And I do feel like Farage is probably a better version of Trump than Trump is. But maybe the British political ground isn't as fatal for the most retarded shit in the universe. Yeah, go ahead.
I would disagree to the extent that I've been not too active with British politics, but as far as I understand, Farage is extremely incompetent. We don't even need to use Farage as an example. We could use the AfD. Like, it is undoubtedly that the AfD is probably 100 times worse than Donald Trump on like every kind of way, and they are also more competent than Donald Trump, but they are still unfathomably incompetent. The AfD is unable to create their own little party structure. The AfD is not able to present the candidates. When people when the last coalition government failed, usually you would have expected the opposition to be very strongly about new elections as fast as possible, but the AfD wasn't, because they weren't able to actually present candidates. That is like the political level to what the AfD is able to. And you even see this in the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party, they project this image of strength, but they are... If you ever find the time to like look into the Nazi Party, they are not strong. They are not organized. They are essentially a backstabbing crime family that is by some miracle... or that was by some miracle able to miracle themselves to Poland and France for whatever reason. And it's the same with Trump. It is, these kinds of leaders are always that way. They are always spectacular. And in the case of the United States, it is so dangerous. It is the most dangerous because it is possible now that other background figures can inject their opinions into him.
You don't think, is that not possible on the British level, to where Farage could be like the face of a movement? They could also have like a strong ideological bend and a strong parallel organization that could, like, let's say like a whole bunch of the Tories and some of the Tory party structure ends up defecting to like the Reform people. Could Farage not be a more effective version of Trump, or is that not possible? Or is this too in the weeds for British politics to say?
I have the feeling, I can't tell you why that is, I have the feeling that British people are culturally less attuned to fascism.
Sure.
They are attuned to national exceptionalism, but not necessarily that broad fascism.
Oh.
And what I would think would happen is that Farage would start governing, and essentially it would be a redo of the Tories. even
Sure.
if he copies the
That might be possible. One thing I worry about is I do feel like, unfortunately, like we export culture to the rest of the world. America does. I feel like we've done that a bit with kind of like the right-wing populist stuff. Now, whether that's through directly, you said no?
Sorry, no.
You don't think so? Okay, tell me why.
So, because the right-wing populist thing was always there. If you look at the look at the development of Germany. Germany was always an extremely conservative, like since the inception of the Kaiserreich, it was always an extremely conservative country. So much so that when the Kaiserreich fell and the First World War was lost, people did not want a democracy in any sense. They wanted a strong leader who did their, to a large extent, nationalistic, but also to a large extent Catholic policies, and that's it. And that is the breeding ground for national socialism.
True, but I will say,
at the same time,
while that's true, though, like, and this is one of the things that I don't like about how Trump has gotten so popular today. You know, love him or hate him for our German friends over in Europe. Wait, are you German? You are German, right?
I am German, yes.
Like, and listen, I'm not a Nazi defender, but like, I think there were understandable reasons why at the end of World War I, if you were a German, you feel like your shit is fucked. Right. So like I can understand that was fertile ground, you know, on the economics, almost like a decade of hyperinflation, and then all the other things after World War I can understand why that feeling would exist. And I don't think that those feelings should exist, especially in America today. And I would say probably not broadly in Europe today. But I feel like when the Trump MAGA movement grew, I feel like when Brexit happened, I think without MAGA, I don't think Brexit would have actually passed. I think that these two movements, I feel like they vibed off of each other and they grew up together. Yeah, but go ahead.
If you ever find the time to look into Brexit,
sure.
Brexit is, I wouldn't use Brexit as an example because Brexit is not necessarily a populist thing that just happened. Rather, it is the most tremendous fuck up by the Tories that anyone has ever seen. The fact that, what was his name? The prime minister at the time called for a non-binding referendum that passed, I think, 42 to 58.
Yeah, this is Cambridge, right?
No, sorry, 48 to 52%. And then, because it was non-binding, could not be repeated, forced the United Kingdom out of the EU is insanity, especially if you consider that if it was binding, it would have been repeated because the way it was conducted essentially made it null and void. That is an incomprehensible fuck up from the Tories. And
sure, but I mean, there's also the fact that half the British or United Kingdom supported the concept of just completely and totally exiting the European Union. No,
I think it was like 68% of electoral participation. So it's like 30.
Well, yeah, you can say that, but I mean, that's assuming that all the other people that didn't vote would have voted one way or the other. Okay. But I'm saying, in terms of who voted.
Waiting. I was together with a British woman for like 4 years. I've been told the overwhelming sentiment in the country, at least around London and Cambridge and Oxford and whatever, was that it doesn't matter because it is not going to pass anyway. And for that reason, a lot of people just didn't go out and vote because the proposition at the time was seen as such an incredible, such an absurd proposition that people just didn't go out and vote.
Sure, I've heard this. I heard this brought up a lot
when it Cambridge Analytica fraud.
Yeah, I've heard this a lot. I've heard people bring this up because I think that was one of the reasons given for why people were trying to push for a revote for a bit, is because people were like, well, we didn't think this would actually happen. But I mean, regardless of, and I'm sure that did influence some percentage, but probably like 1 to 5%, but not like a 10 to 20%. That's still like a huge percentage of the British population that voted to just fucking yeet themselves out of the European Union, which I think is kind of crazy, no?
Have you ever read into Cambridge Analytica?
Yes, a long time ago. The huge Facebook thing with the super ultra targeted ads for information that you probably shouldn't have been able to.
Which is like election interference. It is propagandizing from outside sources.
Sure.
So you might say, okay, this might be 5 to 10%. And then we have like maybe another 5 to 10% through Cambridge Analytica. And suddenly we go from like 33%, a third of the country, to maybe a fourth or a fifth of the country. And I'm sorry to say this, but remember back in school when you were like daily seeing the normal people? I think a fifth or a stupid fifth of the population is generous, and I think that is to be accounted for.
Okay.
As harsh as that. Do you disagree?
that some people are just dumb, that like irredeemably stupid? Is that what you're implying?
Hello.
Hello. Well, look who's back.
I think the Russians.
Oh, could be them too. Yeah.
Yeah, the Russians. I hope it's stable now. Sorry.
Saying that like 20% of people are just really dumb.
I didn't want to say really dumb because that sounds derogatory, but 20% of the people are not necessarily attuned to politics and are easily convinced about anything.
Sure.
And I think that is just the case.
Yeah, sure.
And we should, sorry, we've gone massively off topic.
Okay, yeah, go hit me up. Where were we at?
Yeah, sorry. You said, right, I remember. You said...
Oh, wait, actually, no, wait. I want to explore this for like 2 more minutes, just because I'm curious for your perspective as a European. Because I've always taken this for granted. I've never had anybody challenge me on this before, so I guess I'm kind of curious. In my mind, I feel like the MAGA movement and the Brexit movement grew up almost as like sisterly movements. It's kind of like weird right-wing populist, anti-immigration, which I think was a huge driver for Brexit, anti like superstructure. So like Trump like kind of always like kind of hated NATO and these like the globo homo stuff. I feel like Brexit was like a pushback against like the globo homo to some extent. Yeah, and then you know figures now it's a little bit delayed. Things like mistrust or distrust in the mainstream media. A lot of Brexit people fucking hated the BBC. Claimed that the mainstream media were all liars and all of this. I see a lot of trends that run in parallel to each other. Are you saying more that like maybe your claim is that there were conditions in both countries that allowed these two movements to grow up in parallel, but that it wasn't necessarily the American movement feeding into? Okay, yeah. That could be true. Sure.
That is, you can make an even stronger example, like purely on a time basis. The rise of the AfD is also more or less lined up with the MAGA movement, but the conditions that cause those two movements are vastly different. To understand why I will even say probably Reform and the AfD are more akin to another than they are to MAGA, because both come as a response to very long conservative governments. And in Germany, it is the Merkel government, and the Reform is in response to the Tory governments. And that in conjunction with the respective refugee crises basically caused those.
Sure.
The AfD exclusively they never governed, they campaigned on removing refugees from Germany and stopping them at the border. And that is the same case for Reform. Reform massively governed on the idea that there are people rushing into the UK. They have this Muslim influx of people, and now the Muslims are taking the jobs away. And that was what Reform was based on, which is again more similar to the AfD. Whereas I would say that the American fascism or the MAGA movement, it was built on, I would say, like the disenfranchisement or the feeling of disenfranchisement that many probably felt at the tail end of 2014. And I feel like, again, I'm looking at this from the outside. I'm looking at this from the outside of someone who like consumed way too much US media at the time. But I remember in 2014 that it felt like every politician and every thing that happened in the United States was similar. Like, we're going from Bush to Obama, and Obama, who did good things, basically is another career. Do you remember the term career politicians?
Career politician was a big insult, yeah.
Yeah, that is, I think, what is the stronger point of why did Americans feel disenfranchised? Because to a certain extent, I feel like the stability of the aughts and 2010s basically created this ecosystem where it felt like everything we do doesn't really change anything broadly. And on one hand, we have like this Democratic Party of Obama, and on the other hand, we have like this Republican Party of someone like Mitt Romney. Uh-huh. And I think, at least that's the way it was marketed to me on my YouTube algorithm. I think the changed Donald Trump was more so an outsider coming in and an outsider moving away from the disenfranchisement. Sure. And I think to a very large extent, it is also something that is also very special to America in particular is the news cycle. You don't understand how incredibly fast your news cycle is. No normal European person would ever interact with the American news cycle. The fact that you have 27 news coverage from Fox News or from CNN is mental.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I've commented on this that like
have,
there are things that we get over in literally 1 to 3 days.
Yeah.
Like the whole Venezuela stuff was like a 2 or 3 day news cycle. And in my mind, that could be like a presidential defining, like a term defining thing. Like this thing happened with, and even like with the Iran war now, it's just like we're on to the next, whatever Senate confirmation. Like everything is happening so fast that it feels like nothing is really happening ever. And it's very, very, very crazy, I think.
I think I'm kind of like preempting a question that I wanted to ask in the future or later. I think the correct question to ask is, if we want to avoid Trump's success, or if we want to avoid Republican success, do you think someone like Donald Trump would have ever had a chance in any major European government? And if no, what are the stopgaps that would bring him to his knees?
I mean, today in the UK, maybe? I'm not sure, probably not. The answer that I feel is no, but I feel like it's because your medias in your other countries are still kind of doing things. All American media is like just really, really, really fucked. It's just, our media just sucks. Like, I think that we had like an okay-ish, or maybe even a good, like mainstream media, but there was this thing that happened. You give me your perspective on this too, I'm curious. But like this thing happened where it felt like the people on the left were so afraid of being like, okay, backing up one more step. The conservative movement in the United States has grown increasingly like unreal. They live in a totally different reality. And as a result of that, if you're doing media to cover media and to feel like you're being fair and impartial, you get into this weird world. It's like, okay, well, I got like a million bad things to say about this group of people, and I don't have as much bad to say about the other group of people. So it kind of feels like I'm being partisan or biased in a really bad manner. And I feel like as a result of this, I feel like a lot of liberals in the media fell into this trap of like, I don't want Trump derangement syndrome, so I need to cover both sides fairly. So I need to find shit to nitpick the left about. And then eventually you get this alternative media world that starts to spin up as a result of new technologies and probably foreign interference. And because it benefits one side, the conservatives a ton, they get pushed a lot as well. So then the mainstream media is now like second guessing itself even more, where they're like, holy shit, like the people really do want to hear something different and maybe we're not doing a good job. And then now like our whole media environment has collapsed into this black hole abyss of alternative media slop dog shit, such that like, when you say we have fast media cycles, and then you ask me, do you think Trump would have survived in a European country? I think these two questions are linked, because I think one of the reasons why our media cycles are so fast, and one of the reasons why people like Trump or the Conservative Party in general can thrive, is because there's not really any accountability. Like, media in the United States right now is really just an opportunity for conservatives to come on and do PR, and that's basically it. Like, if I can come on and I can tell a lie, and then I can just stream the next day and do nothing else, like, yeah, these cycles are going to go fast because there's no accountability, nobody's going to push me on anything, and liars thrive in those environments. But like, if it was the case that if Trump did something truly fucked up, like I would say, we don't even talk about it anymore, but the election denialism is a big thing. That should be a thing that comes up every single fucking time somebody talks to these people. You don't believe in the results of the 2020 election? Where's the proof for that? That should come up every single time, such that the media agenda grinds to a halt. We're not covering new stories because we're so fixated on this. It would force the politicians to respond to that, and it would raise the salience of these issues to the average citizen, because now they'd be seeing it on the media all the time. But I think, even though people like to think themselves, especially in America, we love to believe that we're above influences and everything else, and we have free minds in the agency to choose all the best things. If you would actually force an American to sit and listen over and over again to an administration official defend why they don't believe in the results of the 2020 election, and then media people grill them on that, it would change the way people view those issues. But yeah, that's how those issues kind of all tie in to me. I got.
Okay, sorry if you hear me typing. I can't remember everything, so
that's okay.
Typed on your points.
You're fine.
I feel like there are two things to be said about this here. I think there are actually three things. The first one, or the point that I wanted to advance previously, which is like semi-unresponsive, so please stick
you can go for
it. What do you know about memory, about episodic memory?
Not as much as a neuroscientist PhD guy, so what do you mean?
Technically speaking, I'm a psychologist, or might be soon. Well,
my bad. Okay. What in particular?
No, it's fine. Episodic memory is the kind of memory that basically remembers your episode. So, what did you do today? Well, today I had breakfast, then I went to university, then
banged your mom,
went shopping, and now I'm here. So yeah.
Okay.
There is a specific kind of memory illusion if the kinds of episodes you feel are too similar. So, for example, during COVID, we did nothing but get up, do nothing, I don't know, play games all day, go to bed.
Mhm.
This creates a feeling of nothing happened here.
Sure.
Because all the memos blend together.
Yeah.
I would say this is essentially what is happening in the United States. Because you are so inundated with news all the time, constantly. And the news are, today Donald Trump, attacked Iran. Today Donald Trump attacked Venezuela. Today Donald Trump made another scandal. All you hear is scandal, and then another scandal, and all those blend together. And you don't really feel the emotional weight of each individual scandal. Whereas, on the flip side, if you look at how the scandals on the Democratic side are handled, for example, the Benghazi emails, this one particular thing had been judged throughout Fox News, throughout Newsmax for like years, at least a year, with nothing but Hillary's emails and the things she deleted.
Yeah.
And that is, the magnitude is like, it is really hard to illustrate this well, because essentially what it does is it creates an impervious shield for Donald Trump to do whatever he wants, because the news cycle on his misdeeds moves so fast and no one ever focuses on this. You say the Democratic media should have been more objective, I'd say. They should have said what Donald Trump is doing should have been forefront and center, that what he's doing is bad. But what would have happened is the same. The result would have been the same, because it would have been, you open CNN, you look at CNN, and what you see is, today Donald Trump, hit a child. The next day he hits a dog. The day thereafter he invades Venezuela. And the feeling the viewer gets is just this feeling of sameness. I don't have anything against Brian Tyler Cohen, for example, but if you look
at the thumbnail, I've heard that. Yeah.
It is nothing but today Donald Trump
end of the Trump administration, and today the worst thing ever, and Trump is over, and the legal,
and the fact that you always do the same and the same and the same creates this semi-permanent issue of Trump in the back of your memory, and you never get to attach any emotional, I don't want to say understanding, but any emotional gravitas to it, because it is a constant stream of Trump did this, Trump did that, and that allows him to basically navigate away from any kind of consequence.
Sure, although I will say, well, I guess now it's who's putting the cart before the horse or whatever, because I agree with you, but so you're saying that the constant stream of stuff allows him to get away from consequences. In my mind, I have the causality reversed there. I feel like because there are no consequences, he's able to get away with everything. Like, if these things had stronger, well, yeah, clearly you do. So I'm putting out my point. Yeah, you can tell me why. Yeah, because I feel like if there were consequences for any of the things that he was involved in, there would be a greater fixation on the particular thing, whatever it is that we're talking about. But similar to I've done this in a few debates. Or I do this sometimes on Twitter, or like the probably most famous example, I guess, is on Jubilee. Did you see the Jubilee where I argued with the 20 conservatives or whatever?
Maybe.
There's a woman says something about why would you say this? Aren't you sex, or doesn't this make you sexist or whatever? And I'm
and you said
yes. Yeah, I am 50% of the time or whatever, right? Because I don't give it a big response. They move on from it. They're not going to sit there and harp on something where it seems like I'm not reactive to it. And on the conservative side of things, in the media in the United States, the conservatives, they don't react to anything, but also because they're not forced to react to anything. And so if you don't have to react to anything, then when the left brings something up, the conservatives shrug it off, the left sees them not reacting, and then they don't have a way to make it more salient to the population. So then they have to move on to the next thing, assuming, well, maybe this will be the thing that people will have a greater degree of care about, but they don't, because there's never any consequences tied to any of the things that are brought up. But you think that those are reversed. You think that there are no consequences because there are so many bad things. Okay, go.
Because if you look at how Donald Trump entered the political fray, it was not on conservative terms. It was on his own terms.
Yep.
Donald Trump was not in the beginning an extension of the conservative apparatus. Rather, he was a thing that just appeared and
was very contrary to the conservative apparatus. They hated him in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Hated him,
but the things that most importantly, the things that he did weren't so, I don't want to say disegregious. They were like mean comments. They were like making fun of John McCain or of disabled reporters or whatever. And what both right and left-wing media did was just report on it, and then report on the next thing, and then report on the next thing, which then caused the thing that I'm trying to illustrate here. It is not that Fox News initially was so pro-Trump that he didn't face consequences on the conservative side. He did, but it was just too much to put on it. Look at oh god, I don't know what the name of this presidential candidate is, but there is this guy that like got felled because of his yeehaw.
Oh, it's is it Howard Dean, or is that an actor? What is that?
What you should have done is just continue on as usual, or do another scandal. Like it is essentially to like not to be too personal, but just stream through it. Just go on. Don't like we see this in literally. Well, not every facet of German politics, but we see this in facets of German politics, where people used to make mistakes in politics and then they were gone.
Yes.
And at some point in the last 10 years, politicians have realized that not necessarily the appetite, but the
tolerance of the public for scandal is much higher than maybe people had
originally
not the
thought. Tolerance of scandal, the memory of the public to actually enforce this, and most importantly, the lobbying of third-party groups to remove people is just not there.
Sure.
Because the obvious, like, there is a politician, just as an example, Jens Spahn in Germany, who basically during the pandemic took mask deals, like COVID masks, and gave them to his friends, and literally, I think millions or billions of dollars or euros were just wasted because of him. If one would want to fell him, I think one should have to bring a lobby group into existence that does nothing but scream from the rooftops what this person is doing and what he has done, and literally advocate on the lowest level. But that doesn't happen. What happens is that things come out. He gets invited into a talk show like once or twice, and then suddenly Trump kidnaps the Venezuelan president, or suddenly I don't know, another big thing happens in Germany, and people forget because the next big thing is now important.
Sure.
And there's never any time to actually focus on those things. And when those things get focused on in the Bundestag, because he's the coalition, not the coalition, but like the leader of the people of the Conservative Party within the Bundestag, he has the power to manipulate events to his favor. So there are never any consequences. And that is not necessarily because the... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Or finish your sentence. That's not necessarily... You said there are no consequences. That's not necessarily because...
That is not necessarily because there are no consequences on like an electoral basis, but rather because the public is factually not equipped, or like not only the public, like the entire system is not equipped to deal with these many issues at once. Essentially, like imagine you're doing a robbery and you would have your trial, but in the time you have your trial, you do so many other robberies that the justice system can't prosecute any individual robbery because they are bricked up because of the robberies. That is essentially what is happening.
So here's my question, I guess. I actually see, and I hate this, I've said this for a few years now, and I think it's true, that it really does feel like the YouTuber influencer world is kind of the way that I analyze politics today. Like, I feel like there's a ton of crossover in terms of capturing attention and everything.
That's the correct analysis,
How is it that there is such an asymmetry sometimes on the ability for one side to fixate so much on particular things? So, I'll think like a personal example, not like a political example. So like personally, there's this term that people use online, like obsessed. So if I cover Hassan stuff, sometimes people will say like, oh, like you're obsessed with Hassan, or just that, right? You're stalking. He sometimes uses the word stalker. But so that's a common thing that his audience will say, or people on the left will say if I tweet about Hassan or say something like that. Meanwhile, when Hassan talks about me, he will bring up just like he will tweet at or tweet about people that are so minor in my I don't want to say my orbit, but in my area, I guess. It's like the only possible way he could know about these things are if he's either following me much more closely than I would have ever imagined, or if there are people feeding him information for him to interact with. So like him interacting with logistical tweets, or supporting or attacking people like Pisco or Hutch. Like, not to take away anything from those people individually, but like this is almost certainly because of their connection to me, you know? So like as a personal example, so he's able to do that and always beat the like obsessed allegations. Like nobody's like seriously levying this at him. I think when he levies it towards me, he knows it's not a serious accusation, but it carries with his audience. And then when I think of like, so that's like a personal example. And then on the broader political example, if you try to bring up like J6 to conservatives, usually they're like, move on, bro, move on. Who cares? Like, move on. We're over that. Move on, move on. And they've been saying that for years. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden and Hillary's emails these were news items for like half a decade. How
That is a
long?
really good question.
Yeah. So why the asymmetry there? How are they able to do this over and over? Trump the other day brought up one of the oldest Hillary conspiracies from 2016 about flying planes of cash to Iran. They were able to bring up that all of these debunked, never proven, whatever conspiracy. Yeah. Why? So why are conservatives able to hyperfixate? Because in my mind, right, we were just talking about, I would want to talk about like the Venezuelan thing. That should be like a career term or maybe a whole presidential defining thing, Maduro. But for Trump, it's just another day in Trump land. Meanwhile, they can talk about Hunter Biden for 5 years. Yeah, why? Go.
I kind of already answered this. It is the parallel structure. The fact that conservatives have built an apparatus.
Okay, wait, go. I understand that answer. Go one level deeper. Why are they able to build that apparatus, but the left, I guess, wasn't or hasn't in the United States at least? And then is this repeatable throughout all of Europe?
It is repeatable for the Democrats, but
or no, what I'm asking is like, is it the same through all of Europe where the right is able to do this in every European country, but the left isn't, or is this uniquely an American issue?
That is, I only have like 3 countries for this. I have the UK, I have Germany, and I have the US. And from what I've seen is that this is a uniquely American issue.
Okay.
I can tell you I can descriptively tell you why that is. Namely because historically speaking, the Democrats' organization level was focused more on grassroots movement and was focused on unions and black civil rights movement churches. And historically speaking, those 2 things have just broken away because during Reagan, when unions were weakened, they were not able to properly support the democratic movement anymore. And when with like the advent of a more secular United States, the black churches lost their influence. And most broadly speaking, I'd say that there's just no structure on a grassroots level that supports the democratic establishment. Conversely, the Republicans, for whatever reason, they decided at one point that they want this institution, and they built the Heritage Foundation. They built the Federalist Society. Do you know the Democratic Alliance?
No.
For example. I can't quite tell you, for example, why. So in the 2010s, I think, the Koch brothers funded both left and right wing organizations. But where the right wing organizations were somewhat strong, the democratic organizations were not, and they basically fell apart. Which, for example, the Democratic Alliance. I can't quite tell you the reason for this beyond there are historical reasons how there are historical structures how Democrats were organized, and those basically broke away and never got replaced.
Okay.
And that is an extremely unsatisfying answer. But that is the level of analysis not the level of analysis, the level of action that needs to be taken. If we actually want to change things, we need to change those parallel organizations. I would say it must be fundamentally changed on the Republican side. It can't be that the Republicans are moving away from proper institutions. Alternatively, the Democrats need to build these institutions. But the fear that I'm having is that with democratic institutions, Trump has then managed to basically drag down the entire United States into 2 fascist parties. Because something that never came up in imagine we are now Gavin Newsom, the 2 of us, and we want to create our perfect democratic vision for the United States. And somewhere along the line, we just turned fascist. We just completely abused the system as is. We remove all the judges. We put in our own judges, and we basically turn into tyranny. So what then?
Well, I mean, there has to be a way to reset things, right? Like, we know this is possible. Well, I do. I don't know about you guys, because our revolution was like that, right? We had our huge war, and then we had a president that people for a while feared maybe would become our next king, and then he didn't. He, Washington,
but
the next president came, and everything. Yeah. So, I mean, like, it is possible. Right?
I don't know why current people are this bad at politics. I don't know why the United States produces this many, or used to produce this many important statesmen.
Well, I think part of the issue is that this sounds so fucking elitist, but I don't care. Politics began to encompass so many more things in the United States. It allowed people who have no business being involved in politics to become like majorly influential in politics. So the biggest example, I think one of the best tweets I've read like of all time was that right now the entire world is paying the price of Joe Rogan basically becoming interested in politics for the first time at 52 years of age. And unfortunately, there's a huge degree of truth to that.
Joe Rogan, I'm sorry that I'm bringing everything back to this point, but Joe Rogan wouldn't work in that sense without these parallel structures. Look at Joe Rogan in 2016. Of course, he was always a bit conspiratorial, but the guests were someone like Vsauce or The Amazing Atheist, or I think like Ben Shapiro, but quote unquote old Joe Rogan used to be not objective, but he used to have extremists from every aisle.
Sure, but he also used to have a real mind too. Like, I used to think like, oh, well, maybe he was just like a kind of like a Bernie bro. He was always like an anti-establishment guy, and so he just got drafted from one anti-establishment to another. But if you listen to the old Joe Rogan stuff, he actually kind of seems like, this sounds so sad, but like an ideal world of what I would want Joe Rogan to be. And that like he had a lot of different people on, but he had like a critical mind and he could evaluate ideas and not just like stumble upon things accidentally. He would like walk through like a whole rational thought process and everything else. But like so much of that has just completely.
When and why did that change?
For that, unfortunately, I'm going to go back to my other answer. These are always so boring because they're so grand, but like I think it's the social media algorithms. I think that if you put, and I point to, I don't know what you think about Richard Hanania, but I point to him as a big example of this, to where if you put somebody in a certain media environment long enough, and you just have them consume in that environment, they'll lose their perspective on reality. They're just incapable of engaging with reality anymore. Because there comes a certain point, like I feel so ashamed for saying this. I've said this before. Like I was nervous getting my COVID shot and my boosters. I was like, am I fucking up right now? Like, because for me to feel so steadfast and that like I'm like the mRNA technology is solid, it's been tested, it's been trialed, like you have to stand in opposition to so much coordinated mis and disinformation. It's unbelievable how much is out there once you start going down that hole. And I feel like that happened to Joe Rogan in combination with, oh, there was that. And then the second thing was, for whatever reason today, everybody, every man involved in politics now is very fragile. So if you get bullied once by somebody, you can become oppositional to that forever. And I think that CNN doing the ivermectin shit on Joe Rogan, I think that also like broke his mind, unfortunately. And he was just like, yeah.
Why is that only the case though for the left?
I don't know. That's a good fucking question, because when the right, wait. Because I think that, okay, so why does this only happen on one side? I think it's because it's this other idea I talk about when it comes to purity testing, because the right loves voters. And if you're willing to vote for Trump, they will fucking overlook anything. There is no ideological or values test. They will have evangelical funerals for Charlie Kirk while talking about the purity and sanctity of the family, and then they will bring Andrew Tate onto their podcast to talk about masculinity. As long as you're supporting the party and the candidate, they're fine with you. But on the left, we do have some semblance of values or ideology, even in the center left. And then if you don't comport with those, they'll kind of test you on them. And it's just so much easier to find love and acceptance on the right as long as you're willing to support the party or the candidate. And Russia. But I don't know how big that is. But yeah.
True, and Russia. I would say that the right has a better recruiting structure. If you, like, in an ideal world, let's say we had, like, a way to simulate this, and we have Joe Rogan, and then we create a sample of 1,000 Joe Rogans. We say both the right and the left are disorganized in the sense that there's no ongoing system to recruit pundits into one or the other thing. We should have more or less an equal amount of Joe Rogans on one side, because the right, especially under Trump, continuously insult everyone who's not loyal. And we should have another equal side on the left, because CNN or whatever also indirectly insult them. But what we're seeing is that quite literally everyone gets insulted once by the left, and then suddenly they are right wing, or they get insulted like 10 times by the right, but they don't move their position.
Another thing, I'm just supporting you. Just supporting what you're saying also, and then you continue on.
Yeah.
This is also true when it comes to quote unquote loss of trust. That if on the left, if Fauci makes one bad mask recommendation, which I don't even know if he did at this point actually, because every time I go back, I'm like, wait, did he ever even say these things to people? Then that's fine. Or I'm sorry, that's not fine. It's over. You've lost all trust. But on the right, it can be misstep after misstep after misstep after misstep, and like, where's the loss of trust over there? Yeah. So yeah, it's the same thing you're talking about when it comes to that as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, and I would say, I'm going to use this point, the right has the correct recruiting structure. I think Joe Rogan, or the turning point for Joe Rogan, in order, was moving to Austin and moving into this strange right-wing space there. Then maybe moving into Austin during COVID, and maybe like 5% the social media algorithms. I think that the most dramatic change, well, maybe his connection to Elon Musk is more important than the social media algorithms.
Maybe, although Elon Musk also shifted for whatever reason too, right? Because I think Elon Musk has been quoted several times saying Trump is an idiot, or at least once I remember reading an article when he was a SpaceX guy in 2016 as saying, I think Trump was stupid or something. I've read those quotes from Elon before. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, the recruiting part of the right wing is just so much better, because they move in parallel to normal institutions and they move in lockstep to one another. So if you like, have you ever had those kinds of friend groups where you, or not friend groups, or general groups where you said one mean thing against a person and suddenly the entire friend group was against you?
Not me, because I know what you're saying. Yeah,
of course. Mm-hmm. This is just the opposite. You have one person and you're nice with one person. The entire friend group around this, the entire structure, the entire Republican structure, now wants to assimilate you. They want another person here. They want, because you were nice to person A, you should also now expect niceties from person B, and you should expect niceties from person C, because person A to Z want you in that group. And they can do this because, again, they have those parallel structures already in place. They don't need to look at the media diet. I actually looked this up for this conversation. Look at the media diet of Democrats and Republicans. It is not the case that both Republicans only look at right-wing media and Democrats only look at left-wing media. It is rather the case that the Democrats have a very wide spectrum of media that they consume, both somewhat left and rightish, but Republicans only consume a very, very narrow, minor sliver of the media.
Sure.
Which should demonstrate to you that all these things try to take you into their ecosystem. As soon as you're open, or as soon as they see an opening into getting you into the broader Republican ecosystem, they will try to do this, and they will do this on multiple levels. And I think that is the, like, there are two good analogies to this. And one good analogy you brought up is Hassan, because you asked, how is it possible that he gets away with everything? And the reality is, he has the infrastructure for this. He has he controls, or not he controls, but he has positive relations with most subreddits, with most big populist subreddits.
Well, because I think that when you say he has the infrastructure for it, I think that that infrastructure that exists on the right, it exists on the left, but it exists for like this kind of like socialist commie left that don't vote. This has always been my big complaint. You don't think so? Because tankies and people outside of Hassan's fan base will support Hassan as long as they're part of that same kind of like political coalition. When I say similar infrastructure as well, I don't mean the whole because my biggest argument for those people is they don't play the game of politics. They're doing like social media stuff. But insofar as they are willing to go to bat for their figure on the left in like the most sycophantic way possible, and to play kind of like the similar media games as people on the right will, I feel like that infrastructure does exist on the left. It just doesn't exist in the electoral left. It exists in the in like the whatever the online bullshit is. Actually one of my bigger examples of this would actually be the Platner is the Nazi tattoo guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like there is no world where a center left candidate has a history of like, you know, leaving the Marines or whatever the fuck because he doesn't want to get rid of his Nazi tattoos, and everybody on the far left runs defense for him. That is an impossible world. But because he's part of their team, like and they can do their social media bullshit or whatever about it, they're okay with that. And like they come out to bat for him because he's part of that kind of like, for now at least, he's part of that ecosystem. So I feel like,
again, why? The question is, why can this kind of team, why can this kind of, in an ideal world, like let's say we're living the American dream, and we have a genuinely open and free information flow where we don't necessarily have teams or whatever, we have right and left wing people, but there are differences of opinion. How can it be that there are so egregious missteps on one end or on the other end, but they're only punished on the left and not on the right? And the answer is because a large part of the infrastructure where those missteps are being communicated on is controlled by said person. In the case of the Republicans, they control a massive media apparatus, they control a massive legal apparatus, and in the case of online lefties, they control subreddits. It is not. I don't like saying for the left it is on the social media thing, because this implies that these things are comparable when they're only comparable in kind, but not in structure and in outreach. It is basically like the online social media left is essentially a microcosm of the real life Republican right. And like comparing them kind of trivializes the Republican right, I think. Or like,
sure, I mean, like the people on the left don't have the same like political influence, but I feel like it's a similar kind of like people realize, like if there are two environments I can step in, where one is like a critical environment where I have to like answer tough questions and be ready to defend my ideas, and if I fuck up enough, I might get expelled or yeeted from that environment, versus another environment is like infinitely kind of like hug boxy and very nice, and they're always kind of like helping you and they're on your side, and you all kind of have this mutual agreement not to be critical of each other, that people will gravitate towards that nicer environment because it's just an easier environment to exist in. And then they'll all kind of like play by those kind of like gentlemanly agreements. Like I would source my, as a quick example, and then you can talk, like I would source my engagement with conservatives, I think kind of followed that trajectory, where when I was kind of willing to, I hate to say this, but like kind of like play the game, like I'm not going to sit here and lean into you super hard when you say the most retarded shit I've ever heard in my life. And then as soon as I was like, okay, you know what, actually this is really retarded, like we're going to have these conversations more strictly now, then they're like, well, now I don't want to talk to you anymore. I think that people gravitate towards those hug boxy worlds in general because they're easier to exist in. Yeah, okay. And then you can talk from there, but go ahead.
Just so I'm not sure if I'm getting the point across, so please interrupt me if you understand what I'm trying to say. The point that I'm trying to make is because you asked earlier, how can it be that these people, quote unquote, these people,
exist on one side and not the other?
Yes.
Okay, wait.
And
wait. Oh, wait, I'm going to give my answer and then you can give yours. Sorry. Okay. That's okay. So I stopped because I was going to say this part, but then I didn't. But okay. So I think that one of the reasons why Republicans are able to get away with that and the left is not able to get away from that in the United States is because I feel like the left, so the right and the left both play the game of politics, and that they're trying to get their political people elected and some semblance of policy or political ideology passed. But I really do believe, especially over the past couple decades, the left has been the only people who are concerned with governance, and governance and results cannot survive hug boxes, right? If you have a hug box where you're all just kind of like getting high on each other's supply and doing everything, at some point, that's going to filter out into bad policy, and then that's going to cash out in your population getting pissed off at you, like right now, kind of what's happening with the Trump and the gas prices thing, where you can't have the hug box thing. Like you need to you need to be like real people. But I feel like because Republicans have basically given up on governance, if you look at the current Trump admin, Jesus Christ, they basically given up on running the government. It gives them the ability to like exclusively play kind of the social media game. And that's why I think it's existed more on the right than the left right now. That would be my long answer to that. Go for it.
I would say that, as an answer to your answer, Democrats have neglected in party building. I think that is the most central issue that the American political landscape has in the 21st century. Democrats have no party, which in some part is due to the fact that you don't have a minority leader, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Presidential elections. Yeah. You don't have, there is no party after the election is lost. Whereas on the Republican side, you might not have a party, but you still have interest groups. You still have all those interest groups that I listed earlier, and they can continue advancing and planning and strategizing and moving the party forward. The Democrats can't do this. Maybe as an example, or maybe as an analogy, let's say you're just a random person. I don't know. You're not explicitly political, and on any political issue, you just open Reddit. What are you going to see? I can't tell you what you'll see in the United States because we have different algorithms. But the overwhelming majority of my political content, of my general content, are subreddits like DE, which is like short for Deutschland, Germany, and other more or less left-wing subreddits. So whenever I go to those big places, I get a very left-wing filtered reality, and I get an interpretation of a million billion trillion comments that are left-wing filtered. And even though those places are not necessarily a hotbox, because those broader subreddits, which are analogous to those institutions, are more or less skewed to the left, the opinion that I will have after visiting the homepage will be a left-wing opinion. And that is more or less the same that is happening in the United States, because the opinion for a non-political person will be, on one end, a party that more or less has neglected building the party itself and just governs, and on the other end, a party that has built not just a party, but a whole media ecosystem around this. And it just like take a person and let it digest the average American's media diet. On one side, you will see many different, not in lockstep media apparati, machineries, whatever. On the other hand, you will see this machinery. You will see this concerted effort of creating one part. And even though it is wrong to say it is wrong to say that this is just a hackbox. It is, in certain parts, certainly a hackbox, but it's like a fly trap, because once you go into this, you essentially get 100 more of these kinds of things. Like, sorry, I promise. One last example.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a 14-year-old in 2014 or 2016. You don't really have strong opinions on, I don't know, feminism or whatnot, but you open YouTube and what you see is Ben Shapiro owns feminists at a college. You click on this. YouTube now, even with like no malice on YouTube's end, YouTube now knows, oh, you kind of liked watching this video. So what do you get suggested? You get suggested Stephen Crowder. You get suggested maybe Matt Walsh, maybe The Daily Wire. And you kind of like slowly move down this pipeline of all those parallel media machineries that are moving in concert. Whereas if you were to watch
there is no left-wing equivalent. If I were to watch like a Colbert video, I'm not getting like, exactly. I don't even know where the fuck,
But that is not because YouTube does something
nefarious. It's because the right wing are all in lockstep with their policy messaging, because there's like a persistent presence that's always existing in the background, even when they don't have like a person in power. They have that parallel power structure that's advancing ideology constantly.
Look at your own audience. Ideally, you would want to funnel your audience to other creators.
Yes, I've thought about this so much. This is one of the things, I've spoken on this a little bit, but it's one of the things that has irritated me so much, and it's why I keep kind of talking about this Taylor Lorenz story. And really, bro? I don't think I won this fight. Oh, no, I got him. One of the things that's so irritating is, unless I'm missing something, like I don't think Brian Tyler Cohen was benefiting a ton from Chorus. I don't think he needs this to make a lot of money. I don't think there's anything that like he was planning on becoming a billionaire off of fucking Chorus. But when you have a Democrat, a center left guy like Brian Tyler Cohen, who's still probably to the left of me, trying to do something to advance democratic messaging in some ways, like the whole fucking world comes in around this guy in terms of a ostensibly left-wing publication, Wired, publishing a shoddy hit piece by pop culture propagandist Taylor Lorenz. Like anytime the left tries to get together and do like any particular thing, like it seems like you are almost immediately destroyed by other people on the left without the right even having to do anything. And that doesn't even get into like the right can do their own messaging things as well. So yeah, that was like very, very, very frustrating. We have no, because I've thought about this so much because I'm like, that, like, how can I recreate like my quote unquote, my orbiters or whatever kind of, but like, how do we get that with like people on the political left? And it seems impossible. Yeah.
That is, I would say that is because, like, imagine you're playing a free-for-all, just PUBG, whatever, any kind of free-for-all, and you have, on one hand, people who are genuinely playing the game, and then you have, like, three people who are saying, okay, let's just team up and then decide between the three of us who wins. That is the current situation of the right versus the left. And then they queue together, so they come into the same lobbies, and then, meanwhile, they speak across Discord. The left, like, the only two ways out of this is either those parallel structures of the right wing have to be annihilated, but literally burned and razed to the ground, or the left wing has to create those structures. There is no way around this. And just, again, to my broader point, the way I feel like you always analyze these issues is from an electoral perspective, from we now need to remove the GOP. We now need to change the GOP. We need to make it sure that nefarious actors, bad faith actors don't do these things and that they face consequences. And I feel like the correct level of analysis, not to like be, sorry, sound mean in my head, but like the correct level of analysis is to say these structures per se need to be removed, because even if the GOP in their entirety would be removed in another 5 years' time, they will have replaced the ranks, not because suddenly the GOP has like miraculously healed themselves, but rather because those people are already in line due to the parallel back structure.
Sure. I don't necessarily disagree with you in my defense. I do say that there are like a lot of things that would have to change, and then some of this is stuff, I guess I haven't really thought much actually about like this ideological back end so much as like changing the media environment. This motherfucker is gonna try to steal my Rocketeer shit. But yeah, I do agree it has to be more than just winning an election, or I don't know what the fuck it would take to get people on the left to like ever start fucking working together, like in any kind of like meaningful or appreciable way.
The feeling that I'm getting is that you would totally obviously because you're a streamer, but the feeling that I'm getting is that you think of these issues on like an intentional basis. You think of like when you spoke to Hutch, something that I think it was Hutch, something that I wrote down is, in your mind, what would be ideal is to create a large protest where, for example, Wash, Hassan, and you go to a protest and then you cause the scene, for example. That is one way, but that is just not the way that these structures are usually built in America. At least that's not the way the Republicans did. I feel like what needs to be done is that there needs to be some kind of democratic structure that hits multiple different levels of life, I'd say. So, for example, there needs to be democratic chapters, or like a general democratic chapter in universities, an equivalent organization of TPUSA. Someone who goes, or not just someone, but like people who go to the universities and advance democratic talking points, and they advance it in one current manner.
So I agree with you that these things have to happen. The reason why I tend to focus more on the streamer side of things is because I'm a streamer.
Yeah. No,
and because in my mind, these should be like easy things to do, getting people to work together who are kind of pushing on the same political side. The problems, like I think that what you're saying on the left for chapters and all that, I think that needs to happen. I think that's good. But the problems that I can foresee happening are, as soon as these things pop up, like all of the other parts of the left are going to swarm like viruses to attack those things. Because I kind of sort of feel like the chorus program is getting at or possibly in the direction of the thing that you're talking about, like incubating a certain type of talent that have a certain type of ideals, not necessarily the same thing as like the Heritage Foundation or the Federalist Society, but it's like moving in that direction, and everybody swarmed and destroyed those things. So I don't know, I don't know.
Like
go ahead.
the end goal of what we're looking for here is different. In your own words, what would you say is the Federalist Society?
I actually don't know, strictly speaking. My understanding is the Federalist Society is basically a think tank that has a whole bunch of conservative thinkers that are involved, that put out papers and make policy recommendations. They might recommend judges, they might recommend bills or legislation, and that they engage with a whole bunch, basically the entirety of the conservative lawmaker and administrative apparatus.
Yeah, as I understand it, though, it is a chapter-based organization of legal professionals on the conservative side. So an organization that... I don't know if they are in universities, but an organization that, very broadly speaking, recruits quote unquote young legal scholars or old legal scholars, and then puts them into chapters for like local organization. And together across those chapters, they create like a higher order structure with the broad intent to
influence
let's
policy.
Say influence politics. I feel like the issue on the left that we're currently having is that sorry, I always say we because liberals, but I don't mean we as I'm obviously not.
Yeah, don't worry. Habit follower won't ban you from the side.
I'm trying to protect my Reddit account here. The issue that we're having is that the structures that are being created on the left side are very social media influenced. They are influenced with, as far as I feel like it, with the ultimate goal to generate attention, to create whatever, to create content, if you will.
Yeah.
Whereas at the same time, they should be focused on political goals first and foremost. So if you look at, for example, the movements in Germany, the social democratic movement, like in Weimar Germany, it was not uncommon for a person that was in this movement to go to a social democratic school, then afterwards go to a social democratic library, study there, and then go to a social democratic bar. Because first and foremost, those organizations were created with the primary purpose of party building, meaning the purpose of creating spaces for said members, and then the secondary purpose of actually changing politics, which is the same that the Federalist Society did.
Sure.
What is happening is we're creating organizations, I feel like, with the expressed purpose of creating attention. Of like, we're trying to circumvent this entire party process and directly influence politics. Like the Unfuck America tour, I support this. I think that is a good thing. But the Unfuck America tour, as far as I understand, just tries to create attention on issues and tries to focus on issues, where I think it should rather focus on creating an alternative political zone for people who don't want to be conservatives, for people who have like who can disagree, who can go to bars, who can go to the library together, and then this zone necessarily creates the structure that will later influence politics, because the people who perhaps in legal school are in the Unfuck America club, they might go on to be judges or lawyers or attorneys.
I think they also have their chapter thing. I think they're like Unfuck America chapters at schools. I'm not entirely sure to the strength of that. In terms of where they're at with that right now. I do agree with you that would be more idealistic. I don't even know if this is a real complaint, I guess, but on the right, I guess, because they have that infrastructure set up, like every single thing they do ultimately funnels you towards some kind of conservative part into the conservative apparatus. Because like Charlie Kirk's debates didn't really do anything. They were just debating college kids. But he had the Turning Point USA infrastructure behind him to funnel people into. But the Turning Point USA infrastructure was also heavily supported by the mainstream Republican Party. Like Kirk is talking to fucking Trump every other day on the phone, you know? So yeah. But yeah, I just don't know that type of. I just don't know where you even start on the left for that when it seems like nobody is interested in. Like I don't like to come down too hard. I even feel bad for the message I put in chat for Adam Mockler, especially because he's so young and everything. Just my kind of disappointment with the Hassan conversation, because like we spend so much time on the left trying to appeal to these people that fucking hate our fucking party. And then meanwhile, it's like, this is why I kind of like switched off my mode from debating conservatives to being just kind of more like a radical center left guy or whatever, is because it feels like if you're a center left person, there's like no space for you to go and just kind of like be. Those spaces just don't exist. You're either constantly trying to appeal to whatever moderate conservative Joe Rogan brain dead dipshit, or you're constantly apologizing, trying to appeal to, the next billionaire like Hassan Piker, who's flying private jets to go to Oscar after parties about why we should become socialists. And those spaces just don't exist anywhere. The ideology doesn't exist for the center left. It seems like it all got kind of held hostage by radical kids at schools. The media infrastructure doesn't exist for the center left. It's all CNN, WAPO, New York Times who are tripping over themselves to seem became fair and balanced, which means giving way too much credit to conservatives. And then the whole online movement for the left is all basically hijacked by fucking tankies and socialists. And I don't know where you even start to, for that, yeah.
Because the Democrats don't do party building. What
would that party building? I guess more specific.
At this point home.
Yeah, go.
What could be done today? Do you might be the only person who understands this particular anecdote, but do you remember in like 2014 when before, or maybe 2012, before Gamergate, when all the feminist talking points were on vogue, and we had like Anita Sarkeesian and whoever else.
Zoe Quinn was part of the Gamergate fixation, but all these people, yeah.
And you had like, you opened a YouTube comment section, and surprisingly, the comments under there would be, I don't want to say misandristic, but very close, very, very...
After 3 days of Gamergate, they became heavily that, yeah, for sure.
Yes. And then... well, not Gamergate. I would rather say like the broader Ben Shapiro time, but theoretically speaking, after Gamergate as well. And then suddenly the BreadTubers appeared, and they provided talking points, and they provided structured talking points that suddenly the things that the Gamergater and the Ben Shapiros of the world said had responses to. I feel like what we're seeing is like a matter evolving in real time, because for whatever reason, in the broader discourse, there are some talking points that are being repeated because they are the colloquially known wisdom. And then suddenly there are people who popularize other talking points in response to that. And those talking points are not just talking points, they are talking points that seem superficially convincing, and you get to convince someone. If you just like... Never think of this in terms of you having the argument. Think of this in terms of who is seeing the argument. Think of it in terms of you're seeing someone who has like the Anita Sarkeesian adjacent comment on their phone. They read this, and then they open the section under there on YouTube, see all the comments, and all the comments are something like semi-structured Ben Shapiro talking points.
Yeah.
Of course, the people will now more flock to this. Alternatively, imagine you're under a Ben Shapiro video or adjacent content, and suddenly you see BreadTube adjacent talking points. We're basically moving step by step through these different matters of the most efficient talking point available. And I feel like one thing that literally everyone with enough community and computing power could do is take like 20 people, I don't know, spread across the United States, put them out there somewhere and just let them talk to conservatives and test out and trial their talking points. And once you have that, and once you have like sufficient data on what talking point goes well, you basically just create a bot network and let all your bots, or maybe if you want to do it more ethically, your entire community and other communities rehash those talking points. And then you take all the data from those talking points. You look at what kind of talking points got high votes. Maybe take a language model and feed the feedback, the comments after the comments into the language model, and let them evaluate what got more positive and more negative receptions. And you basically keep on refining the talking points and spreading them. I know this isn't necessarily a party building exercise, but it is building an apparatus for communicating those talking points efficiently. And within that apparatus, you're essentially already changing the discourse online. And that is a thing that everyone could do, right?
I don't disagree with what you're saying. So let me summarize, I think, what would happen kind of like in an ideal world. It feels like basically what we would want is a large figure on the left that responds to a large figure on the right. And then that large figure on the right responds to the large figure on the left. And that through this kind of like this dialectic of both sides, you kind of also are spreading these talking points to society. And then for lack of a better word, your minions, your political people at the bottom are carrying these arguments forward, basically. That you want like this kind of setup, basically, yeah?
Yes.
I don't disagree with you. I agree that should happen in a perfect world. Why does this not happen? I understand what you're saying as well, because this is the reason why I respond to things sometimes, and people get annoyed sometimes on stream because they're like, oh, like, why do you have to talk about justical stuff, or why do you have to talk about this? And it's because when I talk about it, the talking points are out there, and then my people carry those talking points those people carry those talking points forward. I guess, I don't disagree with you at all there. It's just really hard to get any type of coalescing of people on the left for stuff like that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, that it doesn't need coalescing. The point is not to create a coalition. The point is to create an instrument, in this case, of propaganda or of party for its own sake. And there needs, it doesn't even need to be public. It could be a company. It could be something.
Well, hold on. I want to push on that. When you say it doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be a coalescing, I feel like if talking points begin to emerge against a conservative from a left-leaning person, but other people on the left even begin to attack those talking points, I don't know if they ever carry as much weight or strength. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe you could find the next best talking points. There's no way, there's no reason not to trial further. We just data analyze them further and create the next best talking points. But and more importantly, at the point where people are now attacking things on their talking points, this is where you want to be, because they now don't attack the things on the personal level. They attack it on the substance level that you try to produce with your organization.
Well, that's assuming that, I guess you would have to have bots or something carrying forward these talking points, because they can always, I guess you could do it. But another issue you run into is the types of talking points that you want to amplify are going to also depend on your political persuasion going into a comment section. So for instance, let's say somebody says, I think that we should actually have more immigrants into the United States because they help us with our budget and because they contribute well to society or whatever bullshit. Let's say that I determine through bots that the best talking point against that is the argument that are race realist arguments against brown people or something, right? Is that, if I put that talking point out there, one, a lot of people on the left aren't going to synergize with that talking point. And then two, I might not necessarily even agree with that talking point.
That's why you tailor them. You don't, there shouldn't be that's in the beginning I said, take 40 people and spread them across the United States. And then you have data from Michigan, you have data from Ohio, you have data from New York, you have data from whatever. And based on those talking points, you can then further stratify those talking points on comment sections. And some people you push into, I don't know, general YouTube sections. Some
but I feel
push into Facebook.
Talking points are ultimately always going to be reflective to some extent of a person's underlying political ideology, right? I don't know how you, there are talking points that I would use against the right that a whole host of people on the far left would never pick up just because we don't share the same ideology. So I don't know, how would you bring those people on board with stuff like that?
You don't need to. Or what do you mean by those people? Who are those people?
Or what do you mean by, I guess, what do you mean by you don't need to? Well, because ultimately the goal of talking points is to get more people to adopt them so that other people are responsive to them, right?
Imagine ideally you have a large family. You have your mother, not your mother, but a mother. You have your uncle. You have maybe nieces and nephews, and you want to try to convince all of them to, I don't know, to go to Italy as a vacation destination. The arguments that you would use for your nieces and nephews would be different than those who you would use for.
I agree with you. Uncle. I agree with you there. But in this example, you all want to go to Italy, right? We're taking that for granted that we might not all want to go to the same place. The way that I would message on tax policy might be fundamentally different than a leftist or somebody to the left of me would message on tax policy, or even the policies we want.
Yeah. But because it is your organization, you decide. You have not your organization literally, but you do the organization. You are the person who wants to see it move into a certain direction, and then you put that into the mission statement. You don't. You're always thinking of bringing that is what I mean. You're always thinking of bringing everyone under the fold, like a Big Ten party, but it doesn't need to be. It just the Democrats just need, even as a subset of Democrats, organized messaging, parallel institutions, things that bring out their talking points, and those things can be entirely separate. It might be that that we might have a Spanberger coalition, and the Spanberger coalition has different talking points than the Bernie Sanders coalition. Everything that at the end of the day matters is that if we move a step higher, those things are somewhat aligned.
I guess I understand what you're saying, or maybe there's one part that I'm not connecting on or not understanding. Is that I feel like part of the strength of the talking points that people do is the fact that they get so much collaboration with everybody else in their sphere, like on the right. So like if Bannon says a thing, it's not just Bannon or Breitbart, it's that every other person on the right is willing to line up behind these things. I feel like you could focus group test or whatever public poll test the best talking points ever. But if like half the Democratic Party or half the left or 90% of the online left is always raging against these points, that type of testing or whatever wouldn't matter anyway. It would never be able to carry that far, is the feeling I have.
Politics and talking points create their own kind of reality. If you really find good talking points, they will be picked up eventually. And I would say, not like to be overly sycophantic here, but there are some talking points that from you that I've seen in other places. And I feel like there are some talking points that even made it to like the way someone like Newsom is treating himself on social media.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I do agree with that. But I still have the chief complaint that any of the center left people are still constantly waging this war against like center, against everything else, against the right, against all the other people on the left, everything else. Yeah.
Ideally, what you do is you replicate the Republican strategy. You see who picks up your talking points, and then you try to recruit them into your ecosystem. Yeah, and those who don't are, in the earlier analogy, the PUBG players who are just playing solo. Over time, if you try to party build, you have a party. The other people don't. So obviously that is an extremely unsatisfactory answer for right now, because it says you need to do you need to go, in analogy, on Steam and find people who do this, and you need to find good people who do this. And
sure. Well, I don't even disagree with you in terms of this actionable thing. Like, this is part of the one, I keep saying this, but it's one of the reasons why I need my court case to end, because it makes me more palatable to these figures. But like for the Unfuck America thing, like bringing Adam Mockler out to that one event, just having people regularly collaborating with people in the ecosystem, and then having those people's audiences see those collaborations, hear those talking points, carry those talking points forward. Like, I do think that this type of stuff is really, really, really important. But it just, that type of collaborative stuff just doesn't happen on the left ever.
It doesn't need to be collaborative. Like, when I say collaborative, I feel like you're saying collaborative in the sense of we are creating content together.
Well, it could be collaborative in terms of at least you're messaging together too. Like, it might be it might be Hutch or Josiah or, God forbid, even Pisco messaging me about a thing where it's like, hey, here's the thing about the SAVE Act or whatever. This is like really fucked. Like, I'm probably going to talk about this a lot today. And then maybe it's somebody pointing out something like, hey, did you know this or whatever. Like, it could even be like a behind the scenes, like just like chatting with each other. But some type of like information exchange, I feel like has to be happening, and it just doesn't.
Not necessarily an information exchange. Depending on how Machiavellian you want to be. You could also go into the comment section with your network of bots and use the best talking points you would say convince someone like Hutch, and then eventually through inundation he carries those forward.
I understand what you're saying there, but I feel like that task, I feel like I know you don't mean to make it sound trivial, but I feel like this would be monumentally difficult to borderline impossible. Like, and compared to when the Republic, if you give me like 10 big influencers, like one of the reasons why I liked being on Twitch before I got banned was that I could set the discourse on Twitch, because whatever I'm talking about, I know everybody else is going to be talking about, because I also go on all their shows. So, and because I would talk with a lot of them behind the scenes and they want me on their shows. So if I'm bringing up, like the Destiny discourse, whatever I'm talking about is going to filter into all these other platforms. Whether they're for or against the points I give, at least they're addressing those points. If you give me like 10 media influencers on YouTube, like I think I could do the same thing on YouTube, where it's like, hey, Crowder just put out this really stupid fucking thing. I think every single person should talk about this fucking thing, because it would force him to respond. It would force people on his side to respond. They would have to be more cognizant of what's going on. But I understand I know what you're saying, and that you theoretically could do this absent that structure, but it feels almost insurmountably hard, as opposed to on the conservative side, you have everybody that's willing to work together for everything anyway.
Okay, two things. Number one, how many people do you think were employed by Cambridge Analytica?
I'm going to guess
how large do you think that company
10,
is?
I guess.
Yeah,
I'm only saying, yeah, sure.
Like, at the end of the day, you need like a handful of concerted people who do this, maybe not full-time, but like part-time, are able to analyze the data, are able to set this up on a large scale, and that's it.
Well, wait, hold on, wait. But Cambridge Analytica was not operating in a vacuum, right? There was also like a whole political media apparatus ready to absorb, whatever data they were able to spit and whatever ads they wanted to run or whatever. Like, there was a whole conservative movement that was ready to plug into this thing too.
Yeah, but the ad campaign itself, what I'm suggesting would be an analogy of that ad campaign right now.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that without like a massitive conservative media and political apparatus ready to synergize with Cambridge Analytica, it would be far less effective. Yeah.
I feel like the point where we are diverging is that you're saying a priori, we need this structure. We need this parallel structure because otherwise what we're doing will never survive. And because we don't have it, we're basically screaming into the void. What I'm trying to say is that might be the case right now, but somehow other people managed to create this structure out of nothing in history before. So, of course, it would be nice if we had the structure already in place, but the second best time to build it is now. And then you would be saying, I would imagine, well, we need like a coalescence of those things. We need like to build multiple branches in tandem. And my answer to this, which sorry, I didn't say this earlier. My answer to this would be, that is not how those things have been built historically. The Federalist Society was not built in tandem parallel to the Heritage Foundation. It was not built in tandem parallel to Fox News. All those things were more or less created opportunistically because some people thought they wanted to leverage political power somehow.
True. But I would say that those things had the benefit of growing or being created in a time where there probably wasn't as fierce competition against the existence of those types of things. Like when they were being created, there wasn't opposing, like they have kind of a sort of first mover advantage. They weren't being opposed necessarily by other organizations of the same type, you know? I want to say too, because I understand what real quick, because you're kind of claiming, and I kind of am, I don't mean to sound defeatist about this, I don't mean to do this, but you're basically saying, I'm saying that a priori, you need two things to exist, and those two things, in order to exist independently, need the other thing to exist a priori, so I'm like circling the drain and saying that it's impossibility.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't disagree that that's the feeling of what I'm saying. You're just not hearing me, you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I guess what I'm thinking is, I wouldn't be opposed to somebody doing the thing that you're saying. I think that I talk about the collaborative side and the influencer side, and then maybe even like the on the ground political stuff, like kind of like canvassing side, because those are the things that I can kind of more. That's what my strong suits are kind of leaning towards. But I do think that whatever comes up, like it doesn't necessarily need to be collaborative, or it doesn't need to have other people on board. But I do feel like any of these things coming up in the current environment will just get killed in the crib. Like I feel like Chorus kind of did, yeah, in terms of like where all the other far left people, as soon as they get a whiff of any of this, are going to go fucking ape shit over it. Yeah,
you, me, and perhaps sorry, that is not like purely hypothetical. I don't want to sound like I'm suggesting anything. You, me, and perhaps three other people could like create a company, or not just a company, but just like a loose structure of what I just suggested. Then like 20 people or 40 people out of your community are being asked to try those things. This is being analyzed, and then we do this. At what point could like other content creators intercept this, as long as we don't publicly market it as such?
At what point could other... Oh, so you're talking about like figuring out the talking points. I guess I'm just curious if those talking points can emerge online, or if those talking points have to come from other creators. Or when I say creators, I could mean like lawmakers as well. Like, do you think the right... Like, I feel like the right gets their marching orders kind of sort of top-down-ish. So, like, when the right is testing their things, like, the closest I can think of to the right testing a talking point is when somebody leaks something to the media, and then they get, like, feedback on it, and then they decide whether or not they want to make this the real policy or not. But I don't know if they're actually, like, testing these talking points online. If anything, I feel like Trump is more a victim to online shit. But yeah, go ahead.
Ideally, if you were to do this, sorry, there's kind of a sidestep. You might need to ask a question again after this if it doesn't sufficiently answer what you've just asked. Ideally, you would let's just take you as an example, not because I'm trying to tell you to do something, just as an example. You could do this and then just do debates. And eventually, perhaps you'll find someone at the Clinton Foundation or at the Obama Foundation or just somewhere where you have an entry point into the Democratic Party, similar to how Steve Bannon did it. And at this point, all you have to do is convince them of the necessity of what you're doing and align yourself with the Democratic Party. There is no point there where someone online could say, destiny is... those are destiny talking points, because at no point would it show outwardly as destiny talking points. It would be an alignment between somewhat closed doors, somewhat openly, but it would be massively, ideally, it should be massively influential, but because it is not geared to content in the streamer sense, Rather, it is geared primarily to the party-building exercise, namely creating an apparatus that online promotes democratic opinions. There is no point where other people could tear it down because it stands and falls with.
Yeah, you would just have to make that argument, I
And
guess, to some Democratic insider or somebody involved with that. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. Listen, you should try this project. Try it out and...
yeah, well, if you have the money,
Yeah, not right now.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't think it's a bad idea at all. It's not necessarily where like my talents lie, I guess, so I don't have the like the intuitive engagement with that.
500 to 1,000 euros a month. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't have to be this. It could be something.
I mean, my version of doing this, like the closest thing that you're talking about, but this is on a very individual level, is trying out just debate talking points just to feel like what does well in a debate or not, I guess, is on a highly individual level. But
I didn't want to use the DGG as a like example of what should be done, but like imagine you had like DGG chapters, and then you basically
wait. Imagine you had something DGG what? I heard
DGG chapters in the
okay, sure.
And the primary point of those chapters would be something like just find people to be nice to, and find people who study together, and find people who do projects together, and then secondarily they are political. And then, which is essentially, by the way, what TPUs aided. They were not, in that sense, primarily political. They like provided, quote unquote, refuge to people who felt alienated to the broader democratic establishment, or the broader establishment as they saw it. And then you have like those spaces, and those spaces grow, and they exchange, and eventually those spaces come to like the president's attention, apparently. And now they're in lockstep. So it doesn't, all I'm trying to say is, you are analyzing, or you were analyzing, hopefully before this conversation, not hereafter, on the level of electoral policy. And that is not the level that Republicans are playing the game. They are playing it on multiple different levels, and they are playing it in on a level that is parallel to normal society.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. Although it would go even deeper than, I guess, because I was looking at, like, for things that are fucked in America, like, I'm looking at it on, like, government level, media level, culture level, and you're hitting, like, deeper, like, very deep into kind of the culture level. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. Go ahead.
Culture, that is, like, political. Like,
well, sure, but what I'm saying is that, like, you're not talking about a thing where it's like you have to go vote a certain way or support a particular policy. Yeah. You're talking about, like, you've got a pool club association across the United States, and like you have a secondary goal of like funneling people towards like progressive or left-leaning ideas, but like primarily it's just like a pool organization or whatever, right? You know who James Fishbach is? Have you seen all the fucking ads or whatever for this guy?
Maybe I've seen his
I debated him on Jubilee, and he's like running for... Is he running for governor of Florida? He just suggested like a 50% OnlyFans tax. You've definitely, he's the guy in the debate. He was like, Steven. I think if you saw him, you'd recognize him. But like, this is a guy who, like, the second time I met this guy, I agreed to go and judge a debate competition for him because he started what I thought was really cool. It was like a high school debate society, and all the kids there were super friendly and super cool. And I don't think any of it was overtly political when I was there. Well, the topics, I guess, were about politics, but I don't know if you chose your side or not. But like, yeah, it was just like it was just a really cool thing. It was a bunch of high school kids that were really passionate about debate, and then they showed up, and he gives like scholarships and everything for it. I'm like, yeah, this is like a really cool idea. We just don't have anything at all like that, I guess, on the left. I don't know. But stuff like that would be the type of stuff that's like quote unquote like culture, I guess. That when I say culture, that's what I mean to be stuff like that. Yeah, but you mean like those sorts of things, yeah.
That is entirely fine. I feel like maybe post like Vyvan's, I can convince this, but you have this. You need to understand why Trump exists the way he does. Like, what is you read, at least in part, The Coming of the Third Reich. And I feel like Evans creates a really good story of what were the necessary conditions that focused or that caused Hitler to rise. And one very important condition was the role of the military, because the military basically worked as a state in the state. And they created their parallel society, they created their parallel structures, and Hitler was more or less able to hijack this parallel society and not to be beholden to any kind of institutional power, because he had the military support. When Hitler did his Beerhole punch think is the correct term in English.
Sure. Push,
the
whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, the history
I don't know how we pronounce it, something like
23.
Yeah.
The military marched. Initially the military did not want to march on him because they said, I think paraphrasing, soldiers don't shoot soldiers. Die Wehrmacht schießt nicht auf Soldaten. Something like this. Implying that because Hitler was part of their structure, or like the people who were part of Hitler's structure were also part of the military, therefore they were above the institutional law. Those are like the structures that need to be created. And there need to be media empires, similar to how Hugenberg, I think, in Germany supported Hitler and Fox News supports Donald Trump. There need to be those media structures, primarily, of course, with the idea or with the goal of creating politics and media, but secondarily with the goal of creating legislative change. And you can't just like force this into existence if that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a building over time thing. Yeah.
Right. There was one thing else. Do you think banning social media or like flipping the switch the way you suggested it would solve the issues?
Solve, no, but I think it would go a good step in that direction. It would make other things easier, more possible. Yeah, I do think that right now.
Elaborate on that?
I think that a person has no idea. So one thing that we've lost is kind of this hierarchy of trustworthiness. So like if if I show you something on CNN, and then you show like if somebody shows me something on like Newsmax, and I counter with something on like CNN or Washington Post, I think that to like an average media savvy person, it should be like an automatic counter almost. Maybe there might be some exceptions depending on what the story's about, but like Newsmax or OAN, these are not like real media organizations that are doing like true reporting or good news. But for a lot of people, and I would argue a lot of this is because of social media, people do not have the ability to discern like a trustworthy or reliable source from a non-trustworthy or reliable source. And I largely blame social media stuffs for that. So I think if that could be fixed, I think that would be immensely helpful.
Why would it not be the case that those people just go back to their previous sources? Like,
Those people go back to what?
Like, why would those people not go back to their previous sources or just like one hierarchy down? Like, let's say...
Well, I think, I understand what you're saying. I think some people would, but I think a lot of them would just quit. I think a lot of them just wouldn't do politics anymore. Yeah. So like, if you got rid of Joe Rogan, you're saying... So your counter to what I'm saying is you're saying, so if you get rid of Joe Rogan, you think those people are all of a sudden going to become informed media people? Or you think they're just going to go listen to like the next dumb media source, go back to Fox News or whatever? You're right. A lot of them would go back to Fox News. Maybe 100% of the people that quit Joe Rogan that consume media again would go back to Fox News. But my guess is some 10 to 40% of the people that consume Joe Rogan would just stop consuming news stuffs and they would just move on to other stuff, which, as sad as it sounds, I would consider that to be a huge net benefit to our environment. I think there's a lot of people. I think one of the huge issues with a lot of the new social media fixation on news is the fact that it brought in a lot of people who were just not traditionally media consumers. Like the people that watch Joe Rogan now, these are not all people that were ardently consuming Fox News and everything prior to Joe Rogan appearing. But now that they're watching Joe Rogan and Theo Von and all these people, now they're also like interested in politics.
Okay. No, but yeah. No, I don't know if I agree, but that is a sensible point. That people just quit. I always like thought in terms of the story that you told about your mother, that your mother just switched from Fox News to Facebook or something. And I don't quite understand why the people who are now that they are polarized or integrated into the Republican ecosystem, why wouldn't they just change to another news source?
Well, sure. It's like there's like a reverse, like if A then B doesn't mean if B then A, right? Like people could be funneled down more horrible media pipelines, but those horrible media pipelines are picking up new people. Like more people are watching Joe Rogan and all these terrible fucking podcasts than like these are newer people that ordinarily just would never be involved in politics at all, would be my guess. And hopefully they would go back to that, as mean as that sounds.
Is it like, do you have to go somewhere? I pretty much, I think I said what I wanted to say. I have just some curious questions that I couldn't
I have to
with my own research.
9 o'clock is my contractual obligation, so you're going to be for 5 more hours.
Oh, Oh, you're 9 o'clock. I see. Why do you think Republicans are so distrustful of like everything?
You need to specify the year, and you need to specify who you're talking about when you say Republicans. Do you mean like voters, or do you mean the lawmakers?
The Republican voter base between the 1980s and the culminating in, let's say, 2024.
I feel like there has been an intentional effort on the part of maybe the right to undermine the established order or whatever. And then absent an enemy to fight against, it seems like that's as good an explanation for whatever societal ills or woes as anything. So I feel like there's been an intentional effort by the right. I think they tried to play that game strategically, and then I think it kind of got away from them, akin to like Nasser talking shit in 67 when he said they were going to fuck up all the Jews and everything. And he was just kind of saying that to appease his population because he was seen as weak. And then all of a sudden Israel attacks him. He's like, oh, fuck. I feel like that kind of happened with conservatives where, you know, they have to undermine, like, because conservatives will sit there and undermine the institutions constantly, but like they're all going to the hospital to get their checkups. All of their children are Ivy League educated. They're Ivy League educated. Like, you know, they're saying one thing, but they don't really mean it. But I think they've said it for so long. Now the conservative voter base, they actually unironically a lot like a critical mass started believing it. And then very quickly, all of the actual political elite had to switch as well. So now you've got these actual retarded, like political media figures who are actual retards that the Republicans before were just pretending to be retarded. What's that quote or whatever? Like anybody that gets their laugh, any comedian that gets their laughs by pretending to be a fool will eventually find himself in good company or something like that. Yeah, basically that's how I feel. Yeah.
So basically, like they kind of manifested it.
Basically, yeah.
The behavior.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you listen to like Rush Limbaugh and all these people, these were like elites of society. But like Rush Limbaugh and all those guys would constantly talk about how like the Dems want to use the government to control your life and the government and the government and the government and the government. And they would say these things. And like, I don't really know if they super 1 trillion% believe these things as hardcore as they pretended to. But now like people like really do believe these things such that like, I haven't looked it up, but even without looking it up, my guess is that when Rush Limbaugh got cancer, he probably walked his ass to the fucking doctor immediately without question, is my guess. But then you have people like Scott Adams who actually ate the horse paste for a month or two and then died like retards. So I don't think that would have happened in the past with conservative elites. But now like when I say elites, I guess I just mean the heads of the party. But now like the conservative heads of the party are actually retards. Yeah.
But why then is the voter base so much more vigilized?
Like why are they so much more on board with being retarded?
Yeah.
Because I think that safe pocket in my mind. Because I think that I don't think people realize like the impact. I don't know if conservatives realized. I don't believe in crypto bullshit messaging. I don't think that's possible. When people say like this guy's messaging this, but he's going to secretly change up all of his shit or whatever, I don't think that in real life. I don't think that happens. I don't think a person is sophisticated enough to do that, to have a guy like secretly message on some things, and then when they get in office, all of them are like, oh yeah, we all tricked you, ha ha ha. Like I think people just like follow the leader. I think that Republicans were kind of sort of doing that, and then eventually the voter base turned into actual retards, and then the Conservative Party I think was actually legitimately surprised. I think 2016 and 2022 kind of were big examples of that, where the Republican establishment were like, how the fuck are you guys supporting Trump? Are you guys crazy? This guy's fucking horrible. And the Republican establishment are like, bro, Tea Party, anti-institutional, like corrupt politics. What do you mean? Like this is exactly what we believe, you know? A personal example of this personal cultural thing is I know so many conservative women that have grown up to be basically like fiercely feminist. They wouldn't call themselves that. And almost universally, all of their parents end up being really disappointed because they're like, why don't you have a husband at 21? Why don't you have children yet? Or like, where's your like kind of traditional life? But like all of these girls, when they were growing up in these conservative households, all of their moms were constantly telling them, get a job, you go to school, get a job, get educated. You don't want to rely on a man for fucking anything. You don't want to be a slave to some fucking loser guy. And then when they grow up that way, then their parents are like, wait, why aren't you like super trad conned out? Where are all these weird, independent, feminist, whatever bullshit ideas coming from? Yeah. But I just don't think they realize like what they're selling to them. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may rephrase, what you're saying is essentially there's a disconnect in what is wanted on a personal level, for example, for the parents. They want the best for their children, but they don't realize that the quote unquote best colloquial advice is in contrast to their purported values. And for the elites or the Republican head class, they are looking at staying in power, they're looking at mobilizing their base, but they don't realize that through the way that they are mobilizing their base, they're creating negative side products that they cannot get a hold of.
Yeah,
essentially.
I always call these things like the deals with the devils that they were making, that they didn't realize that they were making a deal with the devil with the Trump thing because it was giving them short-term huge popularity, but long-term, I've said this for a long time, and now it's finally starting to manifest, or it already has, is like leading to huge damage in the conservative movement because these aren't sustainable things. Yeah.
Do you? Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you have an intuition of what exactly appeals to Donald? What is the thing that Americans find appealing about Donald Trump? What kind of thing does he capture in the American psyche?
I think that Donald Trump represents something that Americans don't feel like they get or didn't feel like they got from any of the political class was being genuine. I think Dave Chappelle said it best when he called him, that like Donald Trump comes out and he tells it like it is. And I'm always, when I'm in my debate intellectual mode or whatever, I'm always criticizing people. It's like, well, just because somebody's honest, what if they're honestly a horrible person, you know? But I think for the average American person, an honestly horrible person was fine because in their minds, all of the political elite were horrible people. They just lied about it. So if somebody wants to be horrible, at least if they're going to be honest with you, at least, you know, you're on the same page. They're treating you like an adult. And I think that Donald Trump sold that idea and vindicated in a lot of people's minds, like, oh shit, all these politicians are corrupt and are horrible. And here's a guy who's both an elite, so he's interacted with them, right? How many times did Trump say in 2016, I was at their wedding, you know, I know all these guys, I've talked to all these people, Hillary Clinton, I was back there and everything, right? But then is also willing to criticize them at the same time. So you felt like you had like an insider and an outsider simultaneously that was validating all of the bad beliefs that you had about politics at the same time. It was just like the perfect storm of that. And then he's also like decently funny and entertaining. Like Trump's business is being a business, and Trump's brand was having the brand of Trump and being the guy on The Apprentice. Like this is where he made his money. So yeah. I understand, but I feel like this kind of honest liar character would not fly in other countries. Probably not, but I think that in America we're a little different culturally there, I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. But what is the cultural part that makes this possible?
You know who Stephen Fry is?
Yes.
Stephen Fry is an interesting thing where he's talking about the difference between American comedies and British comedies. I think one of the things he points out is that like in an American in an American comedy where you have you know, a guy who's kind of like down on his luck or you know is trying to whatever in life. Even in the guy who's kind of a loser, he's still like a wisecracker. He's a funny dude. You kind of want to, like, you sympathize and empathize with his struggles. And by the end of the movie, generally for American comedies, he's usually got the hot girl, he got the good job, he got the money, he did something to better his life. And I think every American kind of sees themselves as built into our national psyche as being like a dispossessed billionaire or a dispossessed, ultra successful person. And we all have that kind of in our, like, locked in our minds. So we don't want to think of like a politician. Like I joke about this. I say it's like when people are like, oh, I want the president to be like me. And I say, well, I don't want the president to be like me. I would want him to be better than me. I want him to be a better person. The average American doesn't have that thought. They just think that everybody, like we're very much like, even though some race realists and conservatives try to say otherwise, Americans are very much like tabula rasa people where they think all of us are kind of equal and should have like the same capabilities. And we want to see people that are like us and a guy who's like the everyman, but who's also like a wisecracker and successful. And yeah, Trump, I think, resembles that. I don't think in like European society at large, in most that I'm familiar with, I don't think they have those same thoughts, I guess, broadly.
Could it be that I feel like looking from the outside into America has like an ungodly amount of optimism, and no one in Europe ever understands why. For one, like, of course, British and German culture are exceptionally pessimistic, but even like more optimistic cultures like France or I don't know, Spain, probably Italy, probably they cannot match the fervor of we'll pick ourselves up again and we will have our place with the sun. Where does this, like, is it just because America was this country of migrants, the new world hope, or is there something deeper going on that America has this absurd amount of optimism?
American exceptionalism is baked a little bit into our history, right? Like if you like,
but other countries have those too. Like, yeah, but the British feel themselves exceptional.
Well, I'm not trying to shit on my European brothers or whatever, but like the United Kingdom is a fallen empire, right? Kind of, right? Yeah. From controlling at their peak, what was it? Like a quarter of the world's territory was under British rule.
Yeah.
So I mean, like if you look at the United States in terms of our history, we're still arguably, if we're not like on an upshoot, we're like peaked still. Like we're kind of the world hegemonic leader and best schools, highest economy, all of this stuff. So like we're still kind of like riding high off of all of that. I would say maybe similarly actually to Israel, to where if you talk to a Jew in Israel, they're like, we're God's chosen people and all that. It's like, I understand why you feel that way, especially after all the military victories you've had time and time again. I'm sure you feel that way. You've just gone up and up and up. And I feel like Americans, just because of the history of our country, we still kind of carry that feeling with us. Yeah. We don't have any bad, like, we don't have like a, we don't have like a fault. Like we won arguably our civil war. And so we kept our country unified and we helped in the world wars. And so everything has just been seen. And even the things we've lost haven't been consequential to like our territory or our country. That's another thing that's nice about America, is that all the wars that we fight are away from us. So even if we lose, we don't feel the same ramifications. We didn't lose territory to fucking Vietnam or I guess, I'll say Vietnam, I guess. We didn't lose territory to them, or in Afghanistan or whatever. That wasn't our territory that we lost when the Taliban rolled through again. So yeah, probably these things all maybe play into it and factor into it a bit.
Okay.
Oh, also maybe the idea that, and I don't know how fair it is to say with this, I'm only aware of Israel and the US, but I've said other European countries like this. The United States got to set out in a very intentional way, like where you got, instead of kind of like this natural evolution from monarchies and wars and territories and noble elite class and everything else, like a whole bunch of American, or British, I should say, unfortunately, elites like came together, put their brains together, thought out like a constitution, thought out like a broad set of like values, put this into practice, intentionally created a government, intentionally created this infrastructure, and then things kind of grew from that highly intentional creation of things. So that probably helped set us out on the right foot as well. Well, that was a long time ago, but yeah.
Okay.
That's my guess.
No, totally fair. I don't have the answer. I spoke with a friend from New York about this like the other day, because it is a bit strange looking again from the outside in and seeing Trump and seeing this insane distaste for him in every kind of way in Europe, but then at the same time seeing this further inside of America.
I mean, in a way, I think that unfortunately Trump kind of, if you want to be an Ameriskeptic, Trump, I would imagine there's been some Europeans that have said this, or if not, they should. Trump kind of represents what I feel like to a lot of the world, America is Trump. It's a guy who amassed great wealth due to the hard work of people before him, who is incredibly crass and tasteless and doesn't have an understanding of the world, and then is just incredibly, just very gaudy, very insulting, like thinks highly of himself, is quick to throw around the assets that were, gifted to him from times, past and everything. Like, in a way, Trump kind of like represents, I would say, the worst of what America is. But I guess to some people who view, the idea that anybody could become super wealthy, or even though he came from wealth or whatever. I don't know. In a way, I think Trump kind of embodies the worst traits of America, but depending on how you look at it, the worst traits of a thing can be the best traits of it, like toxic masculinity, like a guy who beats the shit out of everybody. Some people are like, oh, that guy's super fucking cool. And other people are like, oh, that's kind of weird. Something like that, I guess.
I see. I'll think about that when I read up on.
Sure. There's a ton of analyses of U.S. culture and why America. I'm sure there are probably way better answers. That's just my
it's hard to read those because I feel like those are American centric, and those are always focused in the thing that I said in the beginning. I feel like is the most truest part to analyze this issue. Why does Trump work in America but not in Europe? What preventions does Europe have for Trump? But the analyses that are on Trump are on Trump and the American system, and not on a comparative analysis, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So we always run into our unfalsifiable stories that say, oh, Trump in the American system is this, that, and the other, because so and so happened. But if we then look into other countries where the same thing happened, Trump didn't exist there, and the question is why? What thing was meaningfully different there that under the same preconditions Trump didn't, or not Trump, but Trumpism didn't come to fruition there? And
do you think that this is I'm drawing from internet memery now, but you're familiar with the picture where it's like hard times create strong men create good. Yeah, maybe in a way you could argue maybe America's been a victim of its own success for a long time, and that because we've been so successful and because there's so much like forward inertia in our system, like we can afford to make a bunch of really silly, stupid mistakes or have a bunch of really silly, stupid people. But it's just so hard to take down such a robust and large system that's been built that those people can kind of exist and our country still function. And now those people just reach like a critical mass, unfortunately. I think of like one thing I think of, here's a question, I guess. Does your right wing, like one thing that I think is just insane to me, this is probably the saddest thing in the US. Also, by the way, one thing that's very sad is that some of these things that I talk about, I feel like every single American citizen should agree with me without question. And the fact that these are like, not only do we not agree, like they completely occupy the other side of this, right? So one thing our right wing has done for a long time, now I don't think they felt this, but they outwardly said it, is they attacked the concept of education, like of higher learning, which is unbelievable to me.
That was not always the case.
Not in the United States, maybe not, but I know the past like 30 years, like the idea of like the Ivy League, your Ivy Towers or whatever, Rush Limbaugh used to say this shit all the time, Michael Savage, like this idea of appealing to the everyman and being a non-educated person, like that is manifested now in Donald Trump attacking what should just be no-brainer American sources of pride, that like no matter who you are, no matter where you are in the world, if I say like Harvard or Yale or Columbia, like these are schools where everybody in the world is like, you know, fuck America, but like, yeah, obviously I'm not gonna say those are bad schools, but now in the United States we attack these things. Donald Trump has attacked these things, and it's like, what the fuck? Is that like anti-intellectual or anti-educational bend existing in right-wing movements in Europe? Is that a thing, or
kind of, but because I only have the best comparison to the AfD, and they are a party that I usually voted, I don't want to say by the disaffected, because it downplays the amount of sheer racism and national socialism that is still in the country, but they are being voted on by people with like, we have a three-tiered high school system with like the lowest usually being like trade jobs, and then we have like the second one usually being things like higher jobs that are not necessarily academic, and then the highest one you do academia.
okay,
Well, not academia, but you usually go on to study and then do more academic jobs. And usually they are being voted on by the lowest degree of those three tiers. So I would wager that the cause of why the AfD is less for education is probably because this is the identity of their voter base. Similar to how National Socialism in like the Weimar Republic tried to garner its way into lower the educated people, lower the educated classes, because A, those are usually the people that are most disaffected by societal and economic change, and two, because those people are usually the easiest to convince. But I don't know. I've read a paper yesterday in preparation for this that claimed that it was once common that the GOP was the party of the white, affluent college graduates. And I didn't really dive deeper into this, but I don't, as far as I understand, the GOP used to be the party of the white college graduates, and I don't know why this changed. And probably before my time, for years.
Well, because they went so far in that appealing to like the working class, or trying to, or the culture war stuff, that eventually they became like the caricaturized versions of things that they attack. Yeah, but I don't like the unfalsifiability. You're right. I hate the historical counterfactual, because like we can go back and we can try to say like this is why, but who knows? Maybe there was like an All in the Family episode that just brain rotted a lot of conservatives. We just don't even realize it. Yeah, I don't know.
True. The thing is, you can falsify those things. You just have to do comparative analyses. You have to actually look at the preconditions and how those preconditions were similar across different countries.
Yeah, it's really hard because there's like so many conditions from one society to the next to try to figure out like what was similar and what was different, and was it similar enough to say that this thing wouldn't have worked or would have worked? You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's impossible to do. It's just it's very, 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 very challenging. Yeah.
You just have to read the papers that do that. I agree technically with you. It is challenging, but like those analyses that exist. So I feel like a few days back you said something to the effect of you just have to read the primary source material, and like that is it. You just,
well, why the fuck are you asking me these questions then? You tell us the answer then, motherfucker.
I don't know. I am. I'm doing so many things. There are only so many. Listen. If you want me to read those and give you like a synthesized version, give me like I don't know, 500 euros a month, and I'll prepare it for you.
Okay. I'll think about it. Okay.
I'll write you 40 pages every month, or maybe every 2 weeks.
Join the pragmatic papers. Okay.
Yeah. No, I just don't have the time right now, sadly. No, one of the big things that I wanted to convince you, and I hopefully have convinced you, is you need to understand what the Republican establishment outside of the GOP is, what it does, and how it caused Donald Trump to rise. And this starts like the war on the media. Lichtman said this. The war on the media is not new. It started with Nixon. Nixon's attack on ABC News and the consorts is where the Republican anti-whatever campaign began. And if you always look at the current symptom, you will never be able to derive a solution that is actually moving the country into a proper way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Or don't. Maybe you can't change it either. Maybe we're just on the inevitable. Sorry.
No, history's not inevitable. Speaking. Of course, we can figure something out.
Yeah, of course, an American says it is not inevitable.
Well, because we are the changers of history, so maybe for you guys it's inevitable, but just because we're the ones. No, I'm just kidding.
You're changing the gas prices. That is what you're changing.
I hope you guys start working together more against, man, I'm looking for this tit for tat anywhere. European leaders need to stop cucking out to the US, although maybe they're kind of finally doing it on this fucking...
I really don't want to be pessimistic. I don't think this will ever work.
What?
I know, like, this big European integration superpower, this will never, I think it will never work, at least not in the next 20 years or in the next 30 years. I know, like, it is easy for an American to say this.
No, I don't. I agree. I don't think it would work. I think that's a Russian talking point. I think that it's explicitly to undermine the take I've always given on this. The very short and simple one is that the U.S. ruling you guys is just, it's really nice to work as a proxy because we're so far away from you and all of you can kind of begrudgingly follow us easily. Whereas I feel like from European Union people, if I'm reading, some article or whatever, somebody grumbling about superstructures, I'm more likely to hear discontent with like Brussels than I am, with what did the White House say in DC. And yeah, I don't know, like one European country leading the continent. You guys just have so much history and bad blood and good blood and everything else is like, yeah, I don't know.
I don't think not necessarily bad blood or good blood. There's a term in German who describes this.
And by term, you mean 3 words that are smashed together, yeah. Sorry, what is the term?
2 words.
Okay.
2 words. Schicksalsgemeinschaft, which would translate to something like a group of people, a society of people who share a fate.
Okay.
For whatever reason, the United States is such a thing. You share a fate in the sense of that if at least in the past, if the states at the coast were to decide, or the one coast were to decide that there needs to be a radical change in the way the system works, or maybe we need to go to war with Germany, as in the Second World War, suddenly the entire country is behind it. You might not like it, but you will do it. Imagine you're in the position of a German soldier or German person in general, and France suddenly has an issue with its military somewhere in Africa. And now because we have a European army, German military goes to Africa and supports or pushes down the insurrection there. That is unthinkable.
Sure.
But it is because we don't feel, not just in that, we don't feel responsible for what France does. So whatever European community there could be, it needs to be a community that has to align on those points, and that is just impossible, least because of the different economic systems. Like one point, but sorry, I'm rambling again, but we try to take Russian assets, unfreeze them, and use those Russian assets to fund the Ukraine war.
Yeah,
this was not possible because of the way credit works across different kinds of countries. It is very easy for Germany to do something and to Kreditwürdigkeit. Sorry.
What?
their credit score. I think it is credit score. Like, it's very easy for Germany to just increase assets and reduce their international credit score, because Germany has like not spent a single euro in like the last 15 years. So they have a very high credit score. But for someone like Italy or for someone like France, it is basically bordering on a national crisis to do this. So we can't just go there as a European community to do this, because the financial situation that would allow something for this to happen in Germany is so remarkably different to the financial situation that would disallow something like this to happen in France or in Italy. And this is the issue that is like happening across multiple issues and multiple countries and multiple communities and multiple cultures. And
this is kind of the goal of the European Union, right? Is to bring a lot of these things in like alignment with each other, right? So that the incentives are
not necessarily like the goal of the European Union was market integration first and nothing else. And now it has morphed to this weird, we have a market, but it's also a cultural union, but also really not. And it's
well, sure, it's not everything. It's not everything all at once. But like, I think the goal of the European Union was integrated such that like, or the idea was to move in the direction of kind of like the United States, right? You have a similar, you would all share a monetary policy. No, not at all. What was the point?
I think financial integration. I feel like
financial integration is part of being bought into each other's things. Yeah.
If you feel like this, probably as far as I understand, it was intended to stop in financial integration, in integrating Germany with France and the United Kingdom and so on, with the explicit purpose of making it mutually assured destruction should they fight again, because the markets are not combined and they can't like war. You can't war against the market that you are in.
Sure, that's part of it, but I mean that plays into the thing that you were talking about. Like, for instance, let's say that there were some French troops or there were like some French territory. Let's assume we're back in the fucking imperial days, and France owned some colony that was.
France still has territory in Africa.
Sure, but who cares? No one cares. It's not relevant anymore. But like, let's assume that it's a place that's like heavily generating oil, and there's like an uprising there. Well, if all of your markets are so heavily integrated with each other, maybe now it's not unfathomable. I literally clicked, dude, the save to desktop. I'm not save's coming. Stop. Let's say that you literally, like if there was some uprising there, now you'd be a little bit more bought in. You'd feel like your destinies are more intertwined there, so there'd be a higher incentive to do it. I'm pretty sure the European Union, the goal was greater integration between all these countries, not just market, but some kind of commonality of like, well, no, actually, I guess trade and currency and central banking and everything.
But not cultural integration the way the United States, like
maybe not 100%, but I would say that like the ability to travel from one place to the other, like unencumbered or uninhibited, like that helps. No,
I asked again a friend in New York if she felt connected to California, and the answer was yes, and that is unfathomable.
Wait, if what? Say that again.
Because
if what?
I asked a friend in New York if she felt connected to California, because those are like, as far as I understand, the farthest point apart.
Sure, of course.
That is, unfathomable to the European mind. You don't feel connected. Like, primarily, you feel mostly connected to your, well, you used to feel connected to your city. Nowadays, you probably feel more connected to your state in Germany. And then you feel connected to your identity as, well, maybe the identity within the states between it, but then you feel connected to your identity as German. You don't feel European. You feel like a part of Germany and a part of the culture that...
yeah, but I mean, like, these things in some ways can kind of sort of change over time, no? Like, do you guys do you feel connected to, this might be retarded, like, is Western Prussia, Germany doesn't have all of Prussia today, right? Isn't like some of it in Western Poland?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, do you feel culturally connected, like, to your Western Polish brethren? Like, probably not, right? Like countries can change borders.
Everyone was purged from that.
Good. Well, fuck them. You know, well, maybe that's what you guys need to fucking do then. Okay, I don't know who was left for that. Okay, fine. Fuck you.
I mean, the Germans were purged after the Second World War.
Sure, after, well, yeah, from a lot of places, I guess. Yeah. I don't know what we're disagreeing on or what the source of this was.
Even Austrian, and like never call an Austrian a German. They don't feel like this. The time for this has passed. Uh-huh. In the past, after the First World War, there was push in Austria to become part of the new German Reich. That time has passed. Austria has now its own identity, and it is extremely difficult to put these things, once they've split apart, back together.
Sure. Do you think, real quick, how old are you?
26.
Okay. So I guess it's harder then because you're a little younger, I guess. But like my understanding is, and I've only seen bullshit polls or whatever, so maybe this isn't that true. My understanding is that like if you were to ask somebody in their 40s or 50s, 60s, do you feel more like a member of like the European Union or like of France or Germany or whatever else, like they're always going to identify more strongly with their country. But as you get younger and younger, people are a little bit more, I'm not trying to do the full global homo citizens of the world thing, but they kind of are more like, oh yeah, like I'm a member of the European Union and I don't identify as strongly with my country as like my forefathers did. Do you think there's any truth to that, or do you think that's just totally not true at all?
I have not yet observed anything to this effect. Like, there is still, like, I remember in school that my school years were like 14 years perhaps ago. And I still remember that 14 years ago, people were making fun of French people, and even teachers were making fun of French people. I agree that France and Germany on a political level are really intertwined. That is a good thing, but like culturally,
you can make,
they're extremely far apart.
Sure. Yeah, I don't want to drill too hard on your example but I mean, like, because I was going to say, like, you can make fun of people, but still feel like people in California will make fun of people.
Arab,
what?
Yeah, you will probably make the Arab argument, like my cousin. Like,
sure. Basically, yeah. They're like, yeah, Americans make fun of other Americans, but when Europeans are present, we're all Americans or whatever. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I feel like this has happened more in response to you, the Americans changing, that there's a greater push. But I don't know. I would say the imperative, again, just like in the conversation, what in my opinion needs to happen is that different countries that have a similar culture should move towards greater integration and build integration for the sake of integration, not on a European basis. Like, I feel like there is Great Britain and Germany have extraordinarily similar cultures. We are both massively pessimistic. We have both very similar outlooks on the world. We both were once great powers that, for whatever reason, fancy themselves. The countries are majority white, in whatever white means. We both value order. We both value queuing, for whatever reason. Those countries could integrate, and those countries could build a greater country and build greater economic strength. But this will just not happen because the political will is not there. But this is what needs to happen for like an European integration, because there will never be similar to how Democrats will never create those structures from the top down. There will never be a European top-down creation. It will always be some countries feel close to another, and then they align, and then suddenly they create greater holds, and those then ideally flourish to even greater parts and integrate more and more. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, but it can't be impossible to become more unified as a continent.
No,
right?
I'm not saying that it is, but saying
there's a lot of work.
The current trajectory.
Yeah.
Like, there is, I just feel like the political will is not there, and I feel like I don't know why our politicians are the way they are, but they are not good, and they are currently not advancing us into a better future. And by our politicians, I mean the conservative.
Sure. Well, because I think it feels like there's still like a general split between whether or not you want to be more globalized versus more like in your own countries. Like, I feel like the right wing across the world right now is kind of on a more isolationist, more autarky end.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I think that is a very American perception. I would say it's just not an issue in the countries.
You don't think like Euroskepticism isn't somewhat of a driver of like, I mean, you would say for the AfD or whatever in Germany at all? Or you think not even close, or?
Not anymore. I think the Brexit was the vaccine against Euroscepticism in Europe.
You think that, like, so if you were to pull the average AfD person, they would have largely favorable opinions about the European Union or greater integration with the European Union?
Like, I think they would, if you were to explicitly ask an AfD voter, eventually they would probably tell you that they want to remove themselves from Brussels. But I don't think if the AfD were to come into power, this would be the big part of what they want to do.
Sure. Just because I think the political leaders have probably realized the economic ramifications are going to be so bad, but it's still stuff that would probably play well with voters, would be my guess. But
yeah, but I don't know. The AfD is if the AfD ever comes to power, we'll probably start a war with France or Poland, or like you have no conceptualization of how bad the AfD is. Whatever you think is happening in the United States is like 100 times worse than the AfD. The AfD is so bad that the Italian not National Front. Wait, sorry, the Italian current government, who's like semi-fascist but not really, has distanced themselves from the AfD. I think even Reform has distanced themselves from the AfD because they realized that those people are literally batshit insane. They are. If they could be, they probably would call out the next German Empire, ramp up military, and then like start a war because I don't know why not. Those people are genuinely mental. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Listen, all I want you to convince of is those structures need to be created on the Democrat side. It is worse than you think, and the Republicans need to be combated on those structures.
Okay.
And I hope I achieved that.
I will keep that in mind. Cool.
Okay.
Any other final thoughts or
one question before I go? Do you I watched your AI debate. Do you care about this stuff, or is it just?
I mean, a little bit, not enough to start hardcore digging into it, but you gave me a different perspective on thinking about thinking. But now a lot of AI people are mad about my new perspective on thinking and thinking. So, but then I'm also rethinking about the thinking and thinking. So I'm not sure. Yeah, go ahead.
You've mentioned me like twice, I think, and every time you mention me, people text me on Discord and be like, "Hey, he talked about you. Go on his stream and speak about intelligence with him." That sounds positive. Cool. Then again, thanks for having me, and have a nice talk.